Hey, are we live? Awesome. Can you guys hear me? Let's see. I just want to make sure everything is working properly. Hey. Hi, Sam. I believe you're the only person in the stream right now, so And there we go. We got a few more people. Hi, Kayla. There we go. People are starting to filter in. I'll probably just wait a few minutes before, hopefully a few more people hop in, and then I can start chatting away. Yeah, let's see. We have I imagine you guys can hear me all right, correct? Howdy. Awesome. We can just awesome. So, yeah, this is my first live stream that I've ever done. Fortunately, technical difficulties don't seem to be really too much of an issue at the moment. So yeah, just want to do this because we crossed 8,000 subscribers recently, which is crazy. Really hasn't hit me yet. Wasn't that long ago that I was like under 1,000, and it's just strange. But I very much appreciate it and all the support. It's a pretty weird thing, I think, to do YouTube because sometimes it feels like all that matters are the analytics and how many views you're getting or how many subscribers you have. But at the same time, those kind of mean nothing. So, despite that, thank you guys so much for tuning in and for supporting my channel. It means a lot, probably more than I'm able to convey right now in words, especially because it's just kind of weird to talk about this stuff, especially the first time I'm going live. But yeah, this is just I don't really have any really big agenda. The two things on my agenda today, I already thanked you, and I'll thank you guys again for sure. But the other two things are to just answer any questions you guys have for me, and then talk about the Batman trailer because I have lots of thoughts about that, and also some thoughts about some other shows and movies and things that have come out recently as well. But mostly the Batman trailer because I am so unbelievably excited for that movie. So I don't know if you guys have any preference of where I start, if you want to ask questions, if you want to just listen to me rant about things for several hours, because I can and will do that. I feel like a lot of my videos, or all of my videos are scripted because my channel is called Critical Rants, and I just in real life tend to rant just unbelievably long about whatever topic has taken my interest, such as Batman. So I feel like it isn't really highlighted in my videos because I have to stay on script. Because if I tried to do a casual video essay or review, I just it would be nonsense. But yeah, I can talk about the Batman. I'm sure and actually DC fandom in general. I'm gonna talk about DC fandom in general really quick before I get into the Batman trailer. Really, actually, I'm gonna put out a thing very quickly on Twitter. There we go. But yeah, DC fandom was like a week or so ago now, maybe a little more. about a week ago. And as for the event overall, I was honestly I think it was pretty overwhelming. I was a little disappointed in it. And I think the main reason is just that a lot of the trailers or teasers or first looks or announcements that we got didn't really have that much substance to them. Like we got to see a really brief clip of Black Adam, which looked cool, but doesn't really tell us that much about the movie. We got to see like Black Adam do like a Mortal Kombat fatality on someone, so like looks cool, could be the greatest movie ever or the worst. Like, and you had like both Gotham Knights and the Suicide Squad game that Rocksteady's making, like just didn't really have any gameplay at all. So I think it was hard to get hyped for a lot of stuff. Like it's nice to see, they have the Blue Beetle panel. They're talking about the Blue Beetle movie, and that could be awesome. That concept art looked ridiculously good. But in terms of like actual substance for a lot of the panels and announcements, there just wasn't that much to it, which is why something like the Batman trailer was so exciting. And obviously that was the main event. That's what pretty much everyone I think was there for the most part. And I loved the trailer, in case that isn't obvious. I'm even more hyped for that movie than I already was. But I think even more so than both trailers that we've gotten at the last two DC fandoms, I think what's really excited me is how Matt Reeves, the director of the Batman, talks about that movie and talks about the character. It just has given me so much faith in him as a director and as a storyteller. And I think my camera just keeps unfocusing and refocusing briefly, but it's fine. I don't know why it's doing that. It's just sitting still. But yeah, he just, I think has, I don't want to say like, oh, he gets like Matt Reeves gets Batman as a character, because like we haven't seen the movie yet, and I think that's such like a broad nebulous thing. I don't even think like it's when you say like, oh, a director or a writer just gets this character. Like Batman has been like a million different things throughout his 80+ year history, like, so I think it's hard to pin that down to one sort of just like a conclusive statement. But I think what I can say with confidence after listening to him talk about the character this year and last year's DC fandom is that I think he gets this version of Batman that he's doing very well. Like he has a very clear idea of what type of Batman story he's trying to tell, which I think is honestly like not that dissimilar, at least on paper, from like Batman's character arc in Batman v Superman, which is really not a sentence that I would have expected to say in a positive tone, because I'm not really that big on BVS. Certainly not my least favorite DC movie, I'll tell you that much. But I think based on the trailers and what we've learned, like what excites me so much is that, especially after the second trailer, like Bruce Wayne is starting mentally and emotionally in like a very low place. Like he is very not okay. Like my favorite line from the trailer is where Alfred kind of says to him, like if you keep doing this, like you're gonna die, basically. Like you're gonna just end up dead because you're just so self-destructive. He says something to that effect, and Bruce just replies like, yeah, I don't care what happens to me, which is like a terrible attitude to have, like both as a person and as Batman. Yeah, I can't elaborate on how it's similar to BVS. As you can tell, this is what I was talking about, where I just rant. Because like on paper, I really don't think, like, at least in practice, like that, like Batman's arc in BVS really works for me. I can see why it does for other people, but on paper, I think if you just boil that arc down to its core, it's like Batman starts out as this ruthless, brutal vigilante, and then by the end of the film has learned to be like a better, more well-rounded, more hopeful hero. Of course, he shoots and murders people, which I'm not a big fan of. And I would really hate that if that was the case in the Batman. That's really the main thing. And I don't think we'll get that with Robert Pattinson's Batman. But in this movie, I feel like in this trailer, like you see Batman, like he's shot, like he's almost like in some scenes, like he's like a horror movie monster, or like he's just this force of nature, just like walking through bullets, and he's terrifying. Like that last scene where he's like rams the Penguin's car and is just walking towards him, like with the flames behind him. He's like scary, which normally I wouldn't say I love, but I think that same idea of like taking a Batman who is just like really kind of bad at being Batman, and like in how self-destructive and brutal he is, and then I think that gives you so much room to move from that to like a place of balance and a place of like, oh, I was by the end of the film, I would hope that Robert Pattinson's Batman realizes like, oh, I was doing this wrong. Like this was not okay for me to be this brutal or for me to not care about my life this much, you know? So that's kind of how I think it's similar, at least on paper, to BVS. I hope that makes sense, Sydney. And if it doesn't, I will definitely clarify further. I'll be happy to. But that's sort of what I mean. And I just really like that idea of starting Robert Pattinson's Batman and Bruce Wayne out in just this really like bad state of mind because it just gives him so much room to grow. And like I normally wouldn't have said like even like with the I mentioned like he's like basically just like shrugs off bullets. That's really not what like I would want to see from Batman in most iterations personally. Like I kind of like when Batman is a little more low tech, I guess. And that there is definitely some of that. Like I really like the look of the Batmobile in this, and that mostly that it doesn't have guns and rocket launchers on it and stuff like that. But also like it feels like a car. Like it feels like a powerful car, but it's kind of just a car. And I like that, and it's not like this souped up tank, kind of like we got in the Nolan movies or in BVS. Like, I kind of like that it feels a little lower tech. Like I really like Zero Year by Scott Snyder, that comic, which is sort of a retelling of the origin, which is fantastic. And quick plug, Doug from For Every Kind of Geek, who is a channel that you should absolutely be subscribed to, made a great video about that. Go check him out. His videos are just ridiculously good. But I think like I don't really like the idea of like generally of Batman just being this like just like this tank, like as like a person, like his armor is bulletproof. And I really normally wouldn't like that because I think it makes him a little less of a man and more of just like a walking tank. But the reason why I like it in this, oh yeah, of course, Doug. It's if guys for real, just go check out Doug's videos. Every single one of them is ridiculously good. It's I cannot put into words how great his videos are. He really deserves a lot more attention on his channel. I'm just gonna keep saying that. I'll probably shout out a few other people later on, but to continue the thread, like with the whole being bulletproof thing or just like walking through bullets, the reason why I think it works in this movie or it will work is because they are going for this scary Batman who like that scene in the hallway in the trailer where he's walking down the hallway and the guys are shooting him and he's literally just walking through it. Like he could try harder to like take those guys out quicker or to avoid the bullets. And I don't even think it's like a thing so much as he doesn't need to because he has his like suit on. I think it's more that like he just doesn't care. Like it's a really great way of showing that like this Bruce Wayne does not care about his own life that much. He does not care about his well-being because he's dealing with all the trauma that he's experienced in his life, which is kind of obvious of losing his parents and just like taking it out on the world. And he doesn't care what happens to him. He doesn't. And I think that's just like a great way of showing that. So like, it's not, I think again, like it really just comes down to execution. Cause like I compared the arcs or what I think will be the arc in the Batman to the arc in BVS, and like the arc in BVS doesn't really work for me, but I think this one will, as long as it really decries like, yeah, like Robert Pattinson's Batman, like, you know, beating the shit out of criminals is probably not a good thing, at least as brutally as he does it, or, you know, throwing just, you know, being so careless with his own well-being is not a good thing. And that's really what I want from the movie most of all, is to sort of critique that. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense why like I like the whole like bulletproof aspect, I guess. But to catch up with a few comments, Kayla, you're saying you're excited for Catwoman, and man, if can you imagine if they recreated that basketball scene from like the 2004 Catwoman movie? Just man, I instant 11 out of 10 movie, and I'm excited for Catwoman too. Like unironically, Zoe Kravitz looks like she's going to do a fantastic job. We haven't obviously seen that much of her, but I really like the look they're going for with that character, and the fact that like her and Bruce seem to have like a dynamic that's less antagonistic. Like, you know, I mean, because Catwoman's been everything from a villain to a hero and everything in between that, like throughout her many years of being a character in DC Comics. or DC Comics. And I tend to like, I don't mind her being like a villain sometimes, but I tend to like her as more of like an anti-hero, like, you know, a character who ultimately like will side with the good guys or will side with Batman, but you know, like doesn't mean she's gonna play by the rules. Um, but like I think even through their brief conversations, like where Catwoman asks like who he is, like there's clearly I think you might see a vulnerability with both of those characters when they're interacting with each other that you might not normally see because they both kind of put on a very, you know, Batman puts on like I'm just this, you know, force of nature. I'm this, you know, kind of just cold human being when he's in the suit. And Catwoman kind of puts on that facade of like, oh, you know, like I'm just going through life, you know, like nothing can really touch her. Like emotionally, she just doesn't, you know. So I kind of like that even already in the trailer, I got the sense at least that like there is a sort of lowering of the masks between the two of them. Like I'm really excited for that aspect because I think especially in a with the arc they seem to be doing with Bruce Wayne, or at least I am hoping that they do. I think having Catwoman there to sort of pull him back towards, you know, just like not being an absolute lunatic 100% of the time could be really interesting. And I guess going off of that, even like Alfred, we really haven't seen much of, and Andy Serkis is playing him, and I'm excited for that. But I do really hope this movie has a strong Batman Alfred relationship because like it's kind of obvious, but I feel like it doesn't always get highlighted. But like Alfred is Batman's dad. Like Alfred raised him. Like, yeah, you know, obviously Thomas Wayne was his dad too, and Martha Wayne was his mom, but like Alfred is just as much a parent to Batman, really, even if not more so in some ways than his biological parents. And I think having like that relationship be strained, but you know, clearly like they care about each other. I think that's really important because like Michael Caine's take on Alfred was great, and his performance as Alfred was great in the Nolan movies. And I actually really like Jeremy Irons as Alfred too, because they both I think he like Jeremy Irons Alfred just had so much sass to him, even in the brief moments that we got with him. I think they both did a great job, but I just really hope that relationship is kind of moved to the forefront in this film. And there's a lot. Hello, welcome to the stream. There's a lot of characters in this movie, and as someone's just saying, asking about if Penguin will be a big villain in the movie. And as you kind of said, Kayla, like I think they'll definitely focus more on Riddler because he seems to be the main villain, and I'm sure I'll get to Riddler in a few minutes because I have a lot to say about him as well. But I think Penguin will probably be like the secondary antagonist, whereas like Riddler will be the primary one. Um, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, he had a fairly prominent role in the second trailer, and I think it's hilarious that like this penguin is just like very Italian, where he's like, "Hey, take it easy, sweetheart." Like, and I do like that he has that kind of I don't know. You can tell he has a personality to him. It's interesting that I think I remember reading in an interview like probably a year ago or something that I think it was Matt Reeves who said like Penguin's sort of like ashamed of because he sort of has like some it looks like scarring or disfiguration on his face, and he's kind of ashamed of that. So I've never been a big fan of Penguin like in the comics or in a lot of adaptations. I feel like he typically just occupies the role of like Gotham City mob boss. And that's not to say that's all there is to him in any iteration, but like that's typically I feel like how he's used. And I don't mind that because like, you know, you have a lot of there's a lot of mob bosses in Gotham City, and Penguin's one of the most well-known Batman villains. But I think there is a potential to do something with that, like having just that personal insecurity, I think can bring a lot to that character. So I think he'll kind of be like in the middle ground to answer your question directly, Kayla, like between the background and the foreground. I think he'll be a consistent presence, but he's not gonna um he's not going to be the main antagonist like Riddler. And now I'm going to get to other questions because I'm kind of falling behind. Um, Sydney asked, do you want him to be the badass kicking people in the face Alfred, like in the Gotham show, or the more chill, wise Alfred, like Jeremy Irons, Michael Caine, or Batman the Animated Series? More so the second one. I don't mind when Alfred is like a badass, or like, because like, I mean, it's always great when Alfred gets one of those moments. Like the first one that came to mind was actually in the Injustice comic, where he just like beats the crap out of Superman, because he's just like, Superman's been so awful to Bruce and his family and Alfred's family, and he just like takes a super pill and just stomps Superman into the ground, which probably wasn't even what you were talking about, but more so like kind of having more of that military background. But I definitely prefer him as the more chill, wise Alfred, like you described, like having him almost be like the emotional core of the film, because like it's not an easy thing to raise Bruce Wayne. He's a crazy person. In addition to just, Alfred, clearly that wasn't his plan to raise this orphan child, but he did it. He took him in. And I like him sort of being that rock for Batman, that presence that he's sort of always going to be there. And that doesn't mean that I want their relationship to be like necessarily, like, I want it to be wholesome, but not all the time. Like Batman is going to lash out at him because, he's a crazy person and he's just kind of struggling to control his emotions, it looks like, in this film. So I'd like him, I feel like I'd like there to even be like a sense of hurt with Alfred when Bruce does lash out at him, where like he deals with it, like Alfred deals with it, but you can tell he's sort of like hurt that his son is basically lashing out at him when he's only trying to help. So I hope that answers your question. But I just like him being that more sage-like, but kind of very human as well. And then what's my favorite supervillain? Man, oh gosh. I'll probably just name a few. I mean, when it comes to Batman, man, do I even have an answer to that question? Kite Man, probably. Hell yeah. I do love Kite Man, but I wouldn't say he's my favorite supervillain. Man, that's tough. I feel like there's so many good options. I mean, like, it's kind of easy to say, like, Doc Ock, or yeah, probably Doc Ock if I had to like pick like a Spider-Man villain as my favorite, which is very basic, but he's just, you can do so much with their relationship and with that character, as well as just having a really fun concept with like the arms. You can, just there's a lot that you can do with that as well, just in terms of like action. Like obviously Spider-Man 2 did a great job of that. There's Spectacular Spider-Man as well, really gets crazy with some of the action scenes. I would say I'll do a favorite Batman supervillain. I don't really know. It's not the Joker. I like the Joker, but he is just in everything, and I would really hate if the Joker was like, I don't think he would be in this movie in the Batman. But I think he's just been in everything recently, and it's just, I want them to do something else. I really like Two-Face. Actually, if I had to pick a favorite supervillain, at least Batman villain, it would be Two-Face if I had to like definitively say one. And like my favorites change all the time, but I think the reason is that there's so much you can do with like Two-Face is one of those characters as well who, like, he's usually more of an outright villain when he is Two-Face, but he can kind of, anti-hero is a broad term, but sort of be more of an anti-hero sometimes, or like in the video I made about Two-Face on Batman the Animated Series, what I love about those, at least those first two episodes that he becomes Two-Face, is that like he's not like going around just harming innocent people or like stealing money just to get rich. Like he's still going after like this crime boss. Hey, Mithy from Film Caffeine is here. What's up, Mithy? Go subscribe to Film Caffeine. Check out Coda. It's a short film. It's amazing. Just I'll plug all my friends and channels later, but because I have trouble focusing on one thing at a time, as you can probably tell. But Two-Face as a villain to me is, he, like in Batman the Animated Series, he's going after villains still. And I kind of like that take on that character. Even like, this is a really kind of random pool, but like in Arkham Knight, when you like take in Two-Face and you're just like driving him to the police station, and he's just like in the back of the Batmobile, and he just kind of has this like breakdown and this freak out where he's just yelling at Batman. as like Two-Face, and then like as Harvey at the end of this, after it's just sort of all out of him, he just like gets super sad. He's like Batman, like you promised me that we were gonna save Gotham together. Like you told me like we were gonna save the city, and I believed you basically. And I think having that relationship even between Bruce and Harvey, like as friends sometimes, whether it's or even between Batman and Harvey, there's just a lot of tragedy. I think Batman clearly can feel a lot of guilt for what happened to Harvey because, you know, he feels guilt for a lot of things. I think there's just so much interesting things you can do with that character on both a personal level with the personal relationship between Batman and Two-Face, as well as just, you know, the kind of almost gimmick of the character where he does have the coin and multiple personality disorder, and sort of exploring that in terms of like mental illness is not something you really see depicted. And I do like, I'm not the biggest fan. I used to really like it of like Batman Hush, where like of that story in general. And the person who wrote it's a piece of garbage. But the one thing I do like about at least partway through that story is that like Two-Face has his face like surgically restored and becomes like kind of a good guy again. And I just like that concept, even in like, I'm just going off on a Two-Face rant now, but I'm not really a huge Dark Knight Returns guy. I read it when I was like 16 and I really, really hated the art, which like I never like open a comic book and just look at the art and I'm just like, this is just not for me, and just like close the book. But that's like the one time I've ever done that. But I have seen the animated movies. I plan to reread Dark Knight Returns eventually, or read it because I haven't read it. But I saw the movies and I do like that moment where like he has his face restored again in that film, and then he's kind of just like saying like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a good guy now, and then he just like starts being a villain again, and Batman's like, dude, like what's going on, like why are you doing this? And Two-Face is just like, yeah, like I couldn't just keep pretending like everyone else was pretending. And he like looks in the mirror, and even though like in real life his face has been restored, he sees himself as like his whole face is burned and messed up. And I just think that's a really interesting angle for that character. But yeah, for now I'll just say my favorite supervillain is Two-Face. We'll go with that. At least and I got some other questions, such as who's the best Robin? Oh man. I think if we're to answer this question, I'm going to be talking specifically when the character is Robin. They're all great. Like literally every Robin, like Dick, Jason, Tim, Steph, Damian, they're all fantastic. And if you're going to count Duke Thomas as well. But honestly, like if I had to answer, I would probably say Damian. Mostly because of Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin run, where Dick Grayson is Batman and Damian's his Robin. And he's just such a Damian, I feel like, is one of those characters when he's written poorly, he can be just kind of annoying. But when he's written really well, he's super complex and just such a fun character, like especially in that run of just having like I love the like inversion of like, rather than it being the dark brooding Batman and the bright and cheerful Robin, it's the bright and cheerful Batman who's Dick Grayson, and the dark and brooding Robin who's this like 11-year-old kid who's Damian Wayne. So I really like that dynamic. So I'll say Damian. That's no disrespect to any of the other Robins because they're all great. But yeah, to answer another question, are you excited for the Riddler? I hope he's cool and more dark. I am very excited for the Riddler. And I think he definitely will be. Like it will probably be, you know, a far cry from like Jim Carrey's take on the character, which is much more outlandish and comedic, I suppose. But what I think is specifically exciting to me about the Riddler in the Batman movie is that he seems to be like in the very first trailer, in the very first moments, you have him like killing a dude and like duct taping his face and writing like "no more lies" on it. So it seems like to me, and he even says like that line, like, if you are justice, please do not lie. To me, that sort of implies that like the people he's killing aren't just random people. He sort of has the same goal as Batman of like exposing the corruption in Gotham City and taking down these corrupt people. He's just going about it in a I'm gonna murder people way. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's a really interesting take on that character. And I think specifically given that this is a Gotham City that seems like very, very, it's Gotham City, so it's dark and it's corrupt, but it seems like even more so than usual. Like, at least, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that's an interesting angle to take with that character. And the one thing I really hope I see, because at the end of that very first Batman trailer, you have Riddler talking to Bruce, and Riddler says, like, you're a part of this too. And Bruce goes, oh, like, how am I a part of this? And Riddler just goes, you'll see. What I hope that's implying is, and this might be a bit of, I don't know if it's a controversial take, but I hope that that is implying that, sort of similar to the Telltale Batman games, where, like, I guess, spoiler for like the first season, the first episode of the first season of the Telltale Batman game, which is very good, but like it's sort of revealed that Bruce's parents weren't these kind of great people. They were kind of involved in, like, they had money in the mob and like were kind of a part of the corruption of Gotham City rather than trying to be a solution to it. And it sort of shakes Bruce's whole worldview in that game, and I'd love to see something similar. Because I think it's, and I don't think you need to make it out to be like Thomas and Martha Wayne were these horrible, evil people who killed people, and like, I wouldn't want to see that, but just like, yeah, like, they had ties to the mob, like they weren't perfect saints, and they were tied to that corruption in the city. So when Riddler says that line, like, you're a part of this too, I hope that's what he's alluding to. Yeah, so I'm really excited for Riddler, and now I'm falling behind on questions, which I was not expecting, which is nice. For Every Kind of Geek, subscribe to his channel, says, speaking of Two-Face, would you want to see Scott Snyder's All-Star Batman adapted in any form? So I've actually only read a few issue of All-Star Batman, and it was good. I just, this was years ago, and I never finished it. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Doug. And the two things I remember were that Two-Face was in it, and there's a part where Batman has bat knuckles that like protrude from his gauntlets. It's just so much fun. Yeah, man. I was thinking of like going back and just rereading like Court of Owls and Zero Year and just like all the Scott Snyder stuff, but I just have so many other comic books I need to read. And then, of course, Smithy from Film Caffeine, subscribe to his channel, says, Doug, you were meant to say Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin. Seems to be some contention there. Might just stay out of that one for now. Jay Della, hello. You asked, do you think Matt Reeves will be brave enough for a Robin to show up in the movie? I don't think in the first movie. Although I think my ideal scenario actually for this film is all the stuff I was talking about with Bruce's character arc, and at the very end, you do see like Dick Grayson. That like the implication is that he'll be like adopted by Bruce. I don't think you have to do that in this movie, and I don't expect it, but I would really, really, really want it in the second movie. Like, I think there is something so interesting. There's so much potential, and like taking the Batman that we're seeing now with like in the trailers, who seems to be again like in that very low place mentally and emotionally, and is kind of out of control, and just saying, okay, here's a kid, here's make him Robin. Now you have to be a dad. That is just so, there's so much potential, because I think that would be a good way of pulling him kind of further away from that darkness, because like you can't afford to be this brutal maniac walking through bullets and just like beating people up, and like, at least to the same extent, when you have like a teenager that you're trying to teach like, right from wrong. Like, I think that's why I always love the Batman and Robin relationship. And I know we haven't really, I feel like there's the consensus that like we haven't really seen that dynamic explored properly on screen. So I would love for there to be Robin, or like you say, like to adopt Dick Grayson in the end. Like, I would love that, because I think it's a pretty simple thing to pull off. Like, yes, even for this Batman who's kind of deranged, like, and just very like, as Robert Pattinson described his take on the character, like unsanitized. I think despite that, the reason why he adopts him in the first place is because like he sees that Dick Grayson went through the same thing he went through, and he can't help but empathize. He can't help but say, I need to be there, for this child who lost his world and has nothing. And now, just like Alfred was for me, like, I think like despite like almost because, you know, this Batman is so close to that point of just like almost of no return, of just brutality and not caring about his own well-being. I think that would almost be like a wake-up call for him to have like Dick Grayson at his side. And Owen Likes Comics, another fantastic channel you should be subscribed to. Just says, just stopping by to say congrats on 8K. You've been absolutely crushing it lately, and you deserve all the success and more. Here's to the next 8,000 subs. Thank you so much, Owen. That's very sweet of you. Owen is like one of the just best people in the comic tube space, just in general, both in terms of the quality of his videos and just him being very nice, as you can tell. He did, I think my favorite video of Owen's is his documentary on Mr. Miracle and Jack Kirby, which is just unbelievably, like, ridiculously, stupidly good. I couldn't put into words. Owen is like, has so much, he brings usually like a historical context, both within like the story and like behind the scenes, especially of the stories he covers, which is what makes his videos so unique. And that video especially, like, he puts so much work into it, shows so much, and you learn a lot from watching his videos. So yeah, go check out Owen's videos. I do want to get back to the sort of Robin or sidekick thing a little later, but thoughts on the Flash trailer? Oh boy. The trailer was fine. I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised that it focused on the Flash as much as it did. I kind of just imagined, kind of like how I picture the movie itself right now, is just like Batman the movie featuring the Flash and his friends. But I did like that the Flash was the focus of it. I do like that it seemed like they're leaning completely into the multiverse angle, where it's like you have that shot at the end of just like Flash and another Flash and Supergirl, and then they're talking to Michael Keaton's Batman, or maybe they're not, but you know, we know Michael Keaton's Batman is in it, and we saw a brief glimpse of him. And I thought the trailer was fine. It didn't get me hyped, and honestly, at this point, barring like any new information or like a new trailer, I don't really think I will get that hyped for the Flash movie. And the main reason why is because I don't think, two reasons. The main one is that I don't think you need to, I mean, Ben Affleck's Batman, I think, has been confirmed to be in this movie. Michael Keaton's like Supergirl is going to be in this movie, which is great. I'd love to see Supergirl done on screen. I mean, there's the TV show, but I don't really watch the TV show. But I think the idea of like, it feels like the strategy for this film is like throw as many Batmen as we can into this movie so people will show up and watch it. And it's like, no, like the Flash, just like make a movie about the Flash. Like, he's not like he's a household name. Like, people know who the Flash is. He's the dude who runs fast, like in a red suit. Like, especially given like, I want to say the popularity of the TV show, at least the existence of the TV show that's gone on for like 8 seasons now. Like, people know who the Flash is. And I think to me, it just kind of shows a lack of faith in the character of like, oh, we're not going to be just like telling a standalone story because people aren't going to show up to watch it and we're not going to make money. And given the history of this film, like multiple directors dropped out because of creative differences. I'm sure the script has changed a million times. I mean, this movie was originally supposed to come out in 2018. So I'm not very excited for the movie. I hope I'm wrong. I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong and for it to be amazing and this great love letter to the character. But I guess the other issue I kind of have with it is I do feel like it's kind of weird to start out like the first Flash movie to be like the Flashpoint story or a loose adaptation of it and do this multiverse thing. Like, I don't think you need to, like, you can just tell a story about a superhero who runs fast, who, you know, has issues, like, because, you know, that's what a superhero is. They're just a person who has a power and they have a personal life. Like, I don't really think there's a reason you can't do that with Barry Allen. Or, I mean, I've always been more of a Wally West guy, mostly because of the Justice League animated series. But yeah, the trailer itself was fine. The suit, I kind of like. It definitely looks weird in a few shots. But to be honest, I don't really care about the suit that much. I care much more about how the character is written. And time will tell. We haven't seen much of the film yet, but I'm unfortunately not too optimistic. I do want to get back to Jay Deli. You're talking about the Bat family. I'll probably circle back to that in a little bit, but I do agree that the Bat family is really just as important as Batman himself, if not more so. But and then you also mentioned your favorite Every Kind of Geek video is the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man video. That is one of my favorites too. I don't even know if I could pick a single favorite. But Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is my all-time favorite Spider-Man story, like period, like in any medium. It's written by Tom Taylor, art by Juan Cabal, and I believe a few other people. In fact, I think I have it on my shelf. I don't. Yeah, give me a moment. Yeah, here we go. This book and this one, they're so good. I think the reason why this appeals to me, and yes, now I'm just going to be talking about Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and go check out Doug's video if you haven't seen it. It's also like Doug does a great job of that in that video of like summarizing exactly what makes that story so special, without spoiling everything in it. So like, go check out his video, and if you haven't read it, like go read it. It's amazing. But what I love about Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is that it is, as the name implies, like it's him in the community. And there's like such a sense of like every person in that story matters, like both to Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and just in general. It really does highlight that aspect of the community in a way that I think sort of inverts the relationship between Spider-Man and Peter Parker in most stories, where like normally it's like, oh yeah, like Spider-Man makes Peter Parker's life hell. And I think that's an important part of the character. But what I really appreciate about Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is that it sort of says like, yeah, his life is harder because he's Spider-Man. Like he can barely make rent. Like, all these problems pop up in his personal life because he's busy, saving lives. But it also shows how him being Spider-Man is it's not a one-way street. It does help Peter as well. And more importantly, it's through him helping other people that he kind of helps himself. Like there's a really beautiful moment at the end of the story. I won't spoil it, but where you sort of see all these people come together to support Peter when he needs it most, when he really needs it. And I just love that idea of like the good that Spider-Man puts into the community comes back to him eventually. And I just love that idea. And Doug's video on that for Every Kind of Geek is amazing. I'm just gonna, let me just really quickly see if I can link that in the chat, just so, because it's such a good video. Give me a moment. And then I do want to get to other questions. Here we go. Here's Doug's video. But yeah. So Sydney, you ask, when/if you move away from DC stuff, what do you think of Miss Marvel having Green Lantern-esque powers? I don't like it. I've heard the rumor. Actually, I've been meaning to read Miss Marvel, like the original comics that came out not that long ago. I haven't gotten to it yet. I just have so many comics on my list. But I don't like the idea of having her just like changing her powers, because I don't really think there's like a reason for it. I don't think it's 100% confirmed that they've been doing that, or that that's the plan. But yeah, I think it's just a strange choice. The only thing I could really think of, the only justification is that like they might think it might not look very good in live action. But like Disney, you have a lot of money. Like you can figure it out. I don't mean to like simplify the work of VFX artists, because I'm sure it's incredibly challenging to pull stuff like this off, especially for these $100 million movies. But I think like the issue that I sort of have with changing her powers is that like giving her Green Lantern-esque powers, like I do like the creativity that comes with like Green Lantern's powers, like just like in general. Because it is like it's the only limit is really your imagination, both as a writer and a character. Like when you're saying, oh, make a baseball bat and hit the bad guy with it, like with Lantern Ring, like yeah, that's fun, but like I think a trap that's easy to fall into is just having it be like energy blasts, and I would hate if like Miss Marvel just like energy blast, because like that doesn't really mean anything. There's not as much of a sense of impact. Like we know what it's like when someone gets hit with a baseball bat, but like an energy blast could like it could pulverize someone, or it could just like sting them. And I just hope there's like some impact to her powers, if that makes sense, like the weight of them. and I think it's a slippery slope or an easy trap to fall into. So I'm hoping that they don't go that route and they keep her powers the same, where she can kind of like stretch and expand and like parts of her body and stuff like that. And obviously I'm not an expert on the character at all, but I do think that is clearly the better choice, at least from a visual and storytelling perspective, even because it just makes her a little more unique. Yeah, and then getting back to the Flash has its own mythos. I honestly don't like how the movie is leaning on Batman for its story and Flashpoint, and I hate how Flashpoint has become this important to the character. I 100% agree. That's not to say that like Flashpoint is like, oh man, I hate Flashpoint or anything, like, because I don't, but it's more so that it feels like time travel has become inseparable from the Flash. And I don't mind time travel sometimes, but I think like that character is at his best when he's just kind of on the streets and like street level stuff, and not as much as like the big time stream world ending stuff, world ending stakes. I don't, it does feel like the movie is leaning on that stuff rather than just telling its own story. So I'm not a fan of that. And yeah, I would love a Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man like animated movie or some adaptation of it, because it is something that is a little smaller scale, which is another thing I appreciate about it. Even like back on the topic of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, one of the things I really appreciate about how Peter is written in this series is like his sense of humor. Like he's so awkward. Man, like, gosh, there's just, it's less like he's funny, but it's also sort of like a, just like him, like there's like a part where like he like swings over to like, I don't know, the Avengers Tower or like Stark Tower or whatever, and like talking to Iron Man, and he's like outside on his window, and Iron Man's like, "Hey, get off my window! Like you're leaving residue on there." And Peter just goes like kind of under his breath to himself, like, "Wait, do I leave residue on like one things I stick to?" And he's just like kind of self conscious, and I just kind of like that. It creates a lot of like really funny situations. Yeah, and Tom Taylor's one of my favorite comic book writers, if not my favorite. I think the only other person who would even come close to that is like Grant Morrison. I think either of those would be at the top. And my favorites, as I kind of said previously, like for any list or any category, just change day to day. But Tom Taylor is just such a great writer. And I think it's very easy to see like that he understands, to bring back that phrase, like he understands the appeal of Spider-Man, or at least an appeal of Spider-Man, which is that he cares about the little guy and he cares about people so dearly. Yeah, so I guess I should probably move off of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, as much as I'd love to ramble on about it. Yeah, everyone should go watch Doug's video while we're still plugging that. And well, actually, I'm going to take this moment to really quick just plug a few other people who I think deserve a lot more attention on their videos and on their channels. Mithy from Film Caffeine just hopped in here not that long ago, and his videos are amazing. He has a video essay coming out on Spider-Man Homecoming next week. Actually, I believe tomorrow, which is just fantastic. I've seen the whole thing because I was fortunate enough to see it in advance. And it really captures what's so special about that movie, because sort of like Mithy will say in that video, like Far From Home really didn't resonate as much with me, but Homecoming really did. And his video is kind of looking at like things he appreciates about Homecoming, looking back at it now. But his channel is amazing. He has a bunch of action short films. He has one called Coda, which is sort of the culmination of all the other ones that he's made, which is like 35 minutes, and it's just amazing. You can really tell how much passion he put into, and hard work and just time he put into making that film. So like, please go check out his channel. He has a bunch of other great video essays. I really like also his one on Infinity War, just to shout out another one. In fact, you know what? While we're linking things, I'll just throw his whole channel out here. Let's see. In fact, I'll link Coda. I'll link Coda because that's probably his magnum opus. I'm just gonna link this. Go watch Coda and subscribe to Film Caffeine. And Mithy just deserves so many more subscribers. So I'll move on to other people I want to shout out. Just a few other random people who I think are smaller channels. I mean, Subscribe to Owen as well, because Owen's videos are amazing. But in terms of channels that are like smaller than mine, Production Journal, his video on Superman that he put out, I think his most recent one, is amazing. His editing is just fantastic. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of video essayists where like I feel like watching their videos, the editing is telling a story, or like it really has a sense of like momentum to it. There are definitely a lot of people who do that, but that's not like, your average Joe YouTube video essayist, like, doesn't really do that. In fact, I don't even know like if I'm able to do that sometimes. But like Christian's videos from Production Journal are just fantastic. I'm just gonna keep linking stuff. So go subscribe to his channel. Here we go. Must There Be a Superman? And like this is like about the DCU Superman, and like as someone who never really resonated with that version of the character, I never really connected to him. Like watching this video did give me an appreciation, much more of an appreciation for that character and this iteration of the character. So that's pretty impressive, I think, because like Snyder's take on Superman never, as I said, resonated with me. But yeah, go subscribe to his channel. I'm gonna do one more shout out while we're shouting people out, and then I'll get back to some questions. And believe it or not, I do have more things to say about the Batman and a bunch of other topics. But the last channel I want to shout out is McDermott, who is a video essayist. Which video should I'll do the impact of synth on cinema. He's a really small channel, pretty recent, and just an amazingly talented person and video essayist. He did, let me just link it now, as well as just an incredibly nice person. Just all these people are both talented artists and very nice people. So let me video on he put out a video, probably my favorite one by him. It's tough to tell. All his videos are fantastic. But this video is about the impact of like synthetic music in film. And that's something that I knew nothing about and never even thought about. But it's just like, it really shows how much that changed filmmaking in a lot of ways. And he has another great video about Super Heavy, which is another Scott Snyder Batman arc, where Jim Gordon is Batman, and just a lot of appreciation for that sort of story arc. So yeah, go subscribe to all these people, check out their videos. Like if you like my videos, you'll love these videos. It's just there's so many great people and so many talented people in, I think, the comic tube and film essay space. And there's certainly, I feel like it feels like an overabundance oftentimes, but like I always love discovering new people. So I hope like if at least one of you guys checks out their channel and just like, oh wow, like this is awesome, these videos are amazing, because they are. That would really make me really happy. But let me get back to some questions and some comments. So JDL was saying, yeah, like some may say in regard to Miss Marvel, her powers may be a derivative of Mr. Fantastic, who'll be coming soon in the MCU, but I hate it. And yeah, I totally agree. Like, it's so weird to me that like, if that's the reason, that's such a strange thing of like two people in this vast multiverse having stretchy powers, like no can do, like what? Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. Like you have two people who have Iron Man armors, you had Iron Man and War Machine, like that wasn't an issue. So like, and I'm sure I could go down the list, and Winter Soldier and Captain America, that wasn't an issue. Like it's if they do end up changing her powers and that's the reason, like that's just stupid to me. Like that's ridiculous. Oh boy. I might be mispronouncing your name, but Koi Ryan asked, who is the best anime waifu? I don't know if I got an answer for you on that one. I'm not much of an anime guy. Man, I don't know. Actually, no, I do have an answer. General Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, just such a great character. That is one of my all-time favorite shows. Like I'm talking like probably my number 2 or number 3 all-time favorite TV show, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And as I said, I'm not really an anime guy. But that show was just a masterpiece. So yeah, we'll go with General Armstrong. And moving on to another question. In the Insomniac Wolverine game, do you think Laura Kinney will be included as an important character in the game? I hope so. That Tom Taylor run of All New Wolverine that features her as Wolverine is another one. Another comic that I just has been on my list forever and I haven't gotten to yet. But I know how beloved she is to so many fans. So I hope she would be, because I think like there is the X-Men Origins Wolverine video game, which, unlike the movie that it's based on, is actually terrific. Like, I played that game as like a teenager and it was so much fun. And really like was just the superior version of the film. It was the best way to experience it. And it kind of had more comic book stuff in it and sort of more it wasn't afraid to like kind of bring those elements in. And it was just, the combat was a ton of fun. You could just like lunge onto people. It was an awesome game. So I would hope that like I don't think it will be an issue to like differentiate from that game or any other games that Wolverine has been in, which I don't think are that many. But I do think that would be a great way of like, because I love legacy characters, as I'm sure I'll get to in a little bit. And like we've seen, I feel like Hugh Jackman's performance is so iconic, and so like, that's what people think of when they think of Wolverine. I think throwing in someone like Laura Kinney who could really bring a completely different take on the character, which they could also do that, just with Logan, like in this Wolverine game as well. But like, I think that could be a breath of fresh air and kind of just differentiate it from that sort of mainstream take, if that makes sense, on Wolverine. So yeah, I really hope she would appear at least in some part, if not even having like a main role and being a playable character. You also say, also, I loved your video on Mr. Nobody and the At Home Comic Con with the popularity of Doom Patrol. Thank you, by the way. That was a lot of fun to do. With the popularity of Doom Patrol, I hope that in itself produces more content for the Doom Patrol IP. Basically, I want a Doom Patrol JRPG. Man, that would actually be a lot of fun. That would be interesting. Yeah, it is kind of strange to me that the Doom Patrol show, it just got renewed for season 4. It's greatly received by critics, clearly popular enough to go for 4 seasons, and like seems to be making like HBO Max and DC and Warner Brothers money. And yet like we don't have a current run of Doom Patrol in the comics. We have like no other appearances for them outside of that. Like, it feels like if there's any time for there to be like a Doom Patrol boom, like it's right now. Like, it is really strange. I do like, I'm sure it will improve like the Doom Patrol brand or sort of boost it in some way. Hello, welcome to the stream. But like it's kind of odd to me. Like, I mean, I don't think, if you guys know my channel, like I love Doom Patrol. I love the show. I love Grant Morrison's run, and I really, really love Gerard Way's run, which was the most recent Doom Patrol run, which For Every Kind of Geek also has a video on, and I even have one of the comics back on my shelf over there, which is Doom Patrol Weight of the World, which is hilarious and fantastic and just an awesome Doom Patrol story. But yeah, it's really weird. I do hope that we see more Doom Patrol comics soon, and I would certainly not at all be opposed to like the Doom Patrol show crossing over with other things, but I don't really think it needs to. And yeah, I don't know. I just hope they get some more notoriety, because like there's so much you can do with all these characters, as the show has proved. So yeah, and I do hope, while on the topic of Mr. Nobody, that we do have a return of him later on in like maybe next season. Specifically, what I sort of talked about in my presentation of him like running for president, that just one of my favorite story arcs in like any comic book ever. It's so funny. I would love to see Alan Tudyk run for president as Mr. Nobody in season 4 of Doom Patrol. That is like my biggest wish, I think, for the show. But let's move on to another question. Do you think the OG Teen Titans had a bad portrayal of Starfire? Not at all. I love Starfire in that show. I think like what Teen Titans is really good at is making all of these struggles of their main cast very relatable. Like, they deal with very real things, sometimes really adult things, like Raven especially. Just the older I've gotten, I've related more and more to Raven, which is kind of interesting because as a kid when I watched the show, Raven was like the one I related the least to. I was just like, Beast Boy's funny. I like him. And I'm still definitely most similar to Beast Boy. But I think Starfire, what I really appreciate about her is that she is in some ways like that archetypal hero where like she cares so much about people and she has these fantastic powers, but she also is like, I guess insecure, but more so like, not sure of herself often. Welcome back. And also, thank you so much, Devesh, if I'm pronouncing your name right. Thank you for being here and thank you for the congratulations and just sticking with me through all this time. Yeah, but Starfire is like absolutely, I think probably my favorite episode with her is like Troc in, I think it's season 4, where like there's that guy Valior who seems like a hero but ends up being like racist towards her, and like despite how horribly he treats her, she still like chooses to save him, and there's so much resiliency and compassion in that character, and I really like also her sense of humor. I was gonna say I really like what they do with her in general, but her sense of humor is, I find it so funny, like just the way she talks, where it's like, I don't know, like if she has a bowl of oatmeal, it'll be like, the meal of oat. Like that just tickles my funny bone for some reason. And it's just so silly, but I think it suits the tone of the show perfectly. So yeah, I love Starfire. I think it's a fantastic portrayal of her character. Yeah, it's, and yeah, if you guys haven't seen Doom Patrol, yeah, like I just like Jay Della is saying right now, like the show made me love Doom Patrol. I just want more Doom Patrol in my life. Like that's exactly how I felt because I didn't read any Doom Patrol comics before I watched the show. Like I didn't even really know who the Doom Patrol was. Like I wouldn't have been able to like identify them if like they were on a comic page. I would have been like, I don't know who those weirdos are. Like, and then I watched the show and I was like, these guys are amazing. I want to learn more about them. And I really think any great comic book adaptation will make you just want to go to the comics because you say like, oh wow, I loved Invincible. Now I want to go, read all of Invincible, or whatever it is. Like I think when those characters are written so clearly and so well as they are in the show, it just makes you want more. And that's the mark of a great show. So definitely check out Doom Patrol if you haven't already. It's amazing. It's one of my all-time favorite shows, and oh, it's just so good. Season 3 has been fantastic so far. I'm really interested because things are really starting to build now as you get kind of later into the season. I won't spoil anything because I know not everyone has seen the show. But yeah, I don't think we have any more questions at the moment. But I am going to circle back to talking about the Batman really quick. And sort of going back to the sidekick / like, oh, would you want to see Robin introduced? Yes, as I kind of said earlier, I would love for like Dick Grayson to be at the end of this movie, or especially as like Robin in the next one as a main character. But even more ideally, and this is just my personal wishes that I know are not going to happen in a million years, but I think what I would really love to see, like my ideal scenario, is that in the next film, in like the sequel to the Batman, rather than Bruce Wayne adopting Dick Grayson, he adopts Cassandra Cain, and she becomes Batgirl, and she's like just his first sidekick in this universe. And I know that's probably gonna like tick off a lot of people because it's like, oh no, like Dick Grayson came first. And it's like, okay, yeah, like for 80 or so years he has, but like we don't have to stick to that. Like I think it would be really refreshing to see like not only Dick Grayson eventually join in like a slightly different role. Not that I think that that's really the main appeal of it to me, but just to see Cassandra Cain as like the eventual big sister of the Bat family. Because in case it's not obvious, I love Cassandra Cain. She's my favorite DC Comics character, and probably my favorite comics character in general. And I just think her relationship with Bruce is always so interesting. And given how like I think they would really be like this take on the character of Bruce Wayne and Batman. I think kind of starting out with Cassandra, like you could almost see in the first movie if like, Bruce moves away from being that more brutal vigilante type to like, kind of reining himself in and becoming just a better hero and a healthier person. You could almost see that struggle mirrored in the second movie with Cassandra, where like he finds her, she finds him or whatever it is. And like she's kind of in a similar place where like she doesn't really know how to control her emotions because she's never been taught to because her father abused her and was horrible and so on and so forth. And like Bruce realizing like, oh, like I still have to like, I have to be there for this girl who has nobody else. And yeah, like just like you're saying, like I think her story and the upbringing would really fit in that universe just tonally. And there's so much you can do with that character. Really, I think even like talking about like hopefully like Doom Patrol gets more popular in all mediums. Like I think Cassandra Cain like would have a similar renaissance, I hope. Because once you put a character in the Batman universe or in the Batman movie, like they're gonna take off. Just like by nature of it being so popular because it's a Batman movie. And it looks like it's gonna be an amazing Batman movie. Yeah, and specifically just to be clear, like, yeah, I'm not talking about Birds of Prey Cassandra Cain, which like I do agree, like she was great for that movie. She fit in Birds of Prey, and I love that movie. But like she really only shared a name with Cassandra Cain. So I would, and like especially with all the multiverse stuff now, I don't even think you need that as an excuse. Like this is a different universe than the DCU. Like there's no reason that there can't be a Cassandra Cain in the Birds of Prey universe and in the Batman universe who have the same name but are totally different. I just think there's so much potential with that character and with their relationship. And that's not to say that like Dick Grayson's relationship with Batman, if he was, more likely the sidekick who was introduced, like I'm not saying one would be more interesting than the other, but I just, as a Cassandra Cain fan who really, really wants to see her popularity take off like she deserves, I think putting her in this universe would not only accomplish that, but just make for some really interesting story moments. Yeah, and Duke Thomas is another one. It's oh man, it was such a shame that there was the live action adaptation of Batman Wayne Family Adventures that just like got shut down at the last minute, which would have had both Duke and Cass in live action, even in like a mini series, would have been amazing. And even that like might have promoted the characters a bit. You go, wow, these characters are awesome. I want to see more of them. DC or Warner Brothers gets wind and is like, hey, well let's put them in the movies. But yeah, so I know that's very unlikely that we'll get Cassandra Cain in any of these movies, which is a shame. But I can't help but hope, and I can't help but wish for it. And just backtracking a little of questions. Do you think that DC rushed the DCU? I think their animated movies are better. Yeah, so yes is kind of my answer. Like they definitely rushed some things. Like I think they rushed to Justice League, and I think the reason for that was obvious in that, oh wait, Marvel has the Avengers, that made them $1 billion. We want to do the same thing. I don't think they absolutely needed to have a solo movie for like every single hero in the Justice League before they made the Justice League movie. I think that would have helped. And if we're talking about the theatrical cut specifically right now, of Justice League, like man, what a disaster. Like I don't even know where to begin. But one of the things that's interesting about that, and I forget the exact details, but like the reason why that movie released in 2017, because obviously there were horrible things, happening on set, both with first Zack Snyder losing his daughter very tragically and having to step down, and then Joss Whedon just being a horrible person to a lot of the actors and crew members, and it was just a mess. It was awful. There's a lot of bad stuff that happened on that set and in the making of that film that still really hasn't been set right, unfortunately. But apparently, what I forget where I learned this, but I think I just read an article or something. But like the reason why that movie wasn't delayed further or at all, I forget if it was delayed initially, but the reason why it wasn't delayed like to 2018 when it clearly needed the time, right? Like I'm not one to usually notice that like, oh man, visual effects in a movie like look bad. Like I'm just not tuned into that kind of stuff because with most stories, I'm just like focusing on the writing, and if I connect with the writing, then I'll like it. And like if some special effects don't look great, then like I don't really mind, or I might not even notice. But like, man, the theatrical cut of Justice League, its special effects were bad. Like there were some awful green screens. There are just some like really, really sloppy moments. Like there's that one shot of like Flash's armor where you can see it like shift when it should be shifting or something. And the reason why they didn't want to delay that to get to the point is because like at least one or some of the executives or higher ups at Warner Brothers wouldn't get a bonus that year unless that movie released in 2017. So they said, no, we're just going to keep it in 2017, despite it being a disaster. So there's that element of rushing, but I think like even going as far back as like BVS, like I think it's not inherently a bad idea to introduce Superman or Batman and Wonder Woman in like what is kind of a Superman movie, sort of a sequel to Man of Steel, but also just to set up for Justice League. Like I think that approach like was definitely a mistake on paper. Like I'm not trying to be like, oh, BVS is bad, but just like that sort of approach to building a cinematic universe of just like we're gonna do Man of Steel, we're gonna do BVS, and then we're gonna do Justice League. Like Suicide Squad was there, Wonder Woman was before Justice League, but after BVS and Suicide Squad, I believe. But like it's clear that they were rushing, and I think it's just because they wanted to get like that sweet Avengers money basically with their Justice League movie. Yeah, I think that in and of itself, like it's kind of ironic given that Warner Brothers seems to have sort of backtracked, at least partially, temporarily, on like the sort of shared cinematic universe where, yes, there's going to be some multiverse stuff with The Flash, and who knows what the ramifications or implications of that will be. But there's also, you know, like you have Shazam, which is in the DCU, and Birds of Prey, which is in the DCU, but like where it fits into continuity isn't really ever specified. And frankly, I don't really think it matters because I love both those movies. Like Batman v Superman, no matter how much you hate it or love it, and like I certainly don't love it, but like no matter where you fall in terms of like your opinion of that movie, like that movie isn't good or bad because like, you know, oh, it's, you know, movies tie into it or it ties into other movies. It's good or bad because it's good or bad as a film. Just like, you know, like the Robert Pattinson Batman movie that's coming out, like that isn't going to be good because it, you know, is like, oh, it's the DCU, or, you know, you get to see Flash crossover with him. Like, it's good if it just tells an interesting and compelling story that stands on its own. And I think that's kind of what they needed to do first. Like, you have that for the most part with like the first Wonder Woman movie, which is awesome. And certainly has some issues, but like, it's just like, here's a story about Wonder Woman. She's cool. And like, awesome. That's great. Like, Shazam and Birds of Prey, I feel like do that as well. Whereas there's just, I feel like especially with like the Flash, that's why I'm kind of not excited for it. But I've kind of been rambling about this enough. I mean, their animated movies, I sort of fell off with like their animated movie universe a couple of years ago, and I haven't really seen all of them. I think a lot of those movies, like in the, I guess what would it be, DC AMU, the DC animated movie universe, like the Justice League War and God, what are some other movies? Whatever other movies are in that timeline, I feel like even the fact that I can't remember some of, I mean, there's like Batman and Robin, or Batman versus Robin, or Son of Batman, like Batman Bad Blood, like those movies, like they're not bad at all, but I don't think they're great, and I don't love the art style that they went with, and I think a lot of the animated movies are kind of held back by like not having different art styles, because like certain stories, like yeah, like even looking at live action, like a Batman v Superman movie should have a different tone than a Shazam movie, you know, like, and they do that, and they both, you know, have different tones, and that's fine, even though they're in the same universe. Like, I kind of wish we got to see a similar thing with the DC AMU. That's a little wordy. But I am going to move on because there's a bunch of other comments and questions. Cassandra Cain is the best Batgirl suit. Yes, gosh, her original Batgirl suit in her 2000s Batgirl run is just so good. It's simple, just like the stitched mouth is just so, it's both scary and like just really cool. Man, I think if you just take that suit and put it in live action, that could look really good. Although honestly, I do think that suit would look even better animated. Like, I would love a Cassandra Cain animated TV show, because what's so great about like the Batgirl comic, especially when Damian Scott is drawing her in like the first like 37 issues or so, is just how expressive her eyes and her mouth are, which like you can't really see that as much. Actually, I take it back then. I don't think it could look great in live action is what I should say, but I don't think it inherently would be like perfect for it. But I think the reason why animation would look so great on it is because you can show so much with just like her eyebrows being a little bit down and her mouth, like you can have that flexibility and sort of that movement on the mouth that you just couldn't really have in live action. But what's great about live action is how much, if the actress did a great job, could like do just through body language, because she's a silent character for the most part, at least initially. Like she doesn't talk much. So just showing like that's kind of what I love so much about the comic, especially early on, is like Cassandra isn't very vocal, so it's just so much of the story is told through her expressions, through her body language. And you can intuit so much from that. And I would love to see that adapted in animated form or even in live action with her suit. I'd probably disagree that the theatrical cut of Justice League isn't terrible, or at least not that much worse than the Snyder cut. I'm glad you enjoy it a little more than I do, but like the theatrical cut of Justice League and Suicide Squad, the theatrical cut for me just kind of sit next to each other in quality, where it's just like these movies were hacked to pieces. And like, I certainly don't love the Snyder cut, but I think it is much better than the theatrical cut of Justice League. But maybe I'll talk about the Snyder cut later. We'll see if I'm feeling generous, because I got a lot of thoughts on it. Yeah, even like a Marvel and DC crossover movie, that would actually be really fun. And here's the thing, like, I don't think it will ever happen, at least. Well, I wouldn't say that. I don't think it will happen in like the next couple of years. But like, if I think the biggest obstacle is just, of course, legal things of, especially now, like, Marvel and Sony have all their own legal things with like Spider-Man characters, and who even knows what goes into that and what's going behind the scenes there. And then like having Warner Brothers and DC be in the mix is just, man, it would be a mess legally, I'm sure, and that's probably an understatement, but it would be a lot of fun. And like, would it kind of just be there to be like, hey, show up to see, these fun little crossovers? Like, yeah, but like, I'm fine with movies doing like fun little crossovers, or even, doing crossovers, as long as the characters are established, like as long as they work in that movie, or as long as they, you like them already. I don't know if that really makes any sense. I feel like I'm not articulating myself very well, but like, it would be a ton of fun. Like, yeah, like I would love to see Superman like meet Captain America, or like even, hey, Sam Wilson is Captain America now, so that would be awesome. But like just fun little crossovers like that. I think a large part of the issue is that there's just so many more Marvel characters in the films right now than there are DC characters, because they've been going for so much longer. But I think it would be so much fun. It would just like, I would love to see even like, not even like a worlds or like multiverse ending stakes kind of thing, because I feel like that's the natural thing. Oh, there's a multiversal event and they cross over, and now they gotta like team up to stop the evil bad guy from destroying all of existence. Like, that's not inherently bad, but I think it would be a lot more fun if you just get to see them like, oh, there's a fly. Hello, fly. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but like, I'd rather just see them kind of like team up to like, oh, fight their bad guys. Like, yeah, like it would be awesome to see like, I don't know, like Shazam like team up with Spider-Man, and they just get to fight the Green Goblin or something. Like, that would be a ton of fun. Or like, fight Black Adam or whatever it is. Like, just little smaller scale stuff like that. I feel like I'd almost love like an anthology series, like an anthology TV show of just like fun little Marvel and DC crossovers. That would be a lot of fun. But if a Robin shows up in the Matt Reeves Batman movie, do you think they'll explore how Robin is as a symbol? With every Robin, I always see it as a metaphor for youth and adolescence. Thus, they form their own. They could, and I would not mind that at all. Like, I think it sort of depends on what the plans are, if any, like for the Bat family. Because like if Dick Grayson shows up, I think eventually, he'll probably become Nightwing. And then they'll bring in Jason or Tim or Steph or Damian or whoever it is, like, because it is kind of unclear how, like, if at all, like, much time will pass between, because like I'm assuming that the Batman will have a sequel movie, even if Matt Reeves doesn't direct it, which I imagine he would, because he seems to really care about the character. But like, Warner Brothers is not gonna not take the opportunity to milk that cash cow. Like, so I would really like to see as more time goes on and as the years go on, it would be great if you could kind of see those characters age in real time and more characters sort of filter in, even if it's like not in movies or just like in spin-offs and stuff. I think that sort of the mantle of Robin being its own thing would be really interesting. Um, so yeah, that could be really cool. And I hope they do something like that. I think it would be something that they'd have to sort of like not plan out like down to the T, but just have like a very broad plan of like, here's where we're going to introduce these characters. And I think as long as that doesn't interfere with the storytelling of the individual movies or shows, I'm fine with it. That is like a huge pet peeve of mine, is that like when in franchise storytelling, which is kind of just all storytelling that big studios are trying to make now. Just we're gonna shove this character in to set up a spinoff, even though they have no reason to be in this story, and they just detract from it because they just take up time and space that was needed elsewhere. That's like one of my biggest pet peeves with stories right now. Excuse me. So as long as they do it well, like you can set up characters or introduce characters organically. I think kind of even like as long as they don't rush into it and just say, "Oh, look, guys, it's Nightwing. Look how cool he is. You love him." Like as long as you do it well, it really just comes down to execution. And talking about how Deadpool changed the way how character expressions used in live action and like animating the mask should be utilized more in movies. Yeah, like that it really like depends on, I think, like Deadpool movies, the mask looks great and they have the white eyes, and I think it works perfectly for like the tone of that film and those films, which I really like both Deadpool movies. I think they're kind of underrated because they're surprisingly heartfelt and have a lot of like, I mean, they're really kind of romantic comedies in a lot of ways, as well as being superhero action movies. But while we're actually, another quick shout out, I'm gonna just pull this up and link this video. That one doesn't count. Another great channel who deserves a lot more attention. He did a video on Deadpool and sort of how that movie got made and how it almost never was made. And it's fascinating. It's really gives you an appreciation for like the nightmare that movie went through, because it was for years and years was trying to get made, and how well it turned out was pretty impressive. So I'm going to link his channel down below, or not his channel, the video, and go subscribe to his channel. Just amazing video essays as well. On Deadpool. Yeah, who do you think should play Dr. Fate in the modern day? Still Pierce Brosnan or someone else? I really like the casting of Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. At least he has definitely has like the look for it and has that, I don't know if like nobility is the right word, but sort of that sense of nobility to him. Man, I don't know if I would cast anyone else. I'm not really typically too good at like casting actors in roles, just like even as like a fan cast, I'm not a casting director, just to be clear, so I'm not good at it professionally either, I would assume. But yeah, I'm happy with the Pierce Brosnan casting. I think I'm really interested to see what they do in the Black Adam movie with like characters like that, like the Justice Society, like Hawkman and stuff. Yeah, I'm not really having anyone come to mind immediately, but if something pops in my head later in the stream, I'll probably circle back to it, but I wouldn't count on it. Yeah, like even doing an animated adaptation of the Amalgam comic, that would be really interesting, because like I assume they would cast like different actors, right? For like all the roles. So if you have like, I don't know, like Dark Claw, who's an amalgamation of Wolverine and Batman, like, I mean, let's just assume that, Hugh Jackman was still playing the character, and like you would have to find someone who like vaguely looks like a cross between Hugh Jackman and like Ben Affleck or Robert Pattinson, and I just think that would be kind of fun. Or like Super Soldier, you have Superman and Captain America, like that would be I feel like that would be, I would personally want to see it where like they do cast different people, which I feel like would weirdly take away from the appeal of like from a marketing standpoint, which is stupid, but like yeah. Another question. So, do you think in the far future Batman will have his original origin story, or will be a completely different character? That's a really interesting question. Huh. Maybe both. if we're talking like 50 years down the line, I think there are some aspects, like, despite that character being around for 80 years and how different Batman has been as a character for so long, ranging from, like, the darkest of the dark to, like, the campiest of the campy, um, and everything in between, and, being more of just, like, a brutal powerhouse or being more of an intellectual detective, like, there's all these different aspects of the character, but, like, even in throughout all his iterations, like, his origin is pretty much exactly the same. And I don't think they need to change it, because I think if they needed to change it to keep the character interesting or to keep the character fresh, like, it would have happened already out of necessity. But I think there's so much, like, inherently interesting to Batman, where, like, he's sort of constantly caught between, like, the light and the dark, to put it, I guess, in very simple terms, of just like, he you know, there's sort of that inherently selfish thing that he does, where he goes out and, he beats up poor people, or, whatever it is, like, he beats up criminals. And that is sort of clearly him taking out a lot of his anger on the world in a lot of iterations. Um, but then despite that, there's also that contradiction where, like, it's also a completely selfless thing, where, like, he does this because he doesn't want any child or person to have to feel the way he felt when he lost his parents, that he wants to save lives. And that, like, to me, is like the purest of the pure motivations against, like, kind of the unpurest of the unpure motivations. And I think it's those two things that are constantly pushing and pulling against one another, like, and just constantly contradicting one another, that make him such an enduring and interesting character. But with all that said, um, I don't think, as long as, like, you do his origin well, if it's a different thing, I would love to see something like that, whether it's in an alternate universe or even in, like, another reboot. Like, I don't think there's any reason why, especially given with a character like Batman, where, like, he's been around so long, we've seen so many similar takes of him just by nature of him being around for so long, even though there's also been a lot of different takes. Like, there's nothing wrong with changing something, like, even, like, kind of like I was saying with, like, yeah, like, what if in the Batman universe, like, Cassandra Cain is Bruce Wayne's first sidekick? Like, it's gonna piss off some people for sure. And, like, even, like, maybe would hypothetically change Batman's origin. I would hate it. But, like, I would rather see them try to do something different and try to take a risk than just settle for doing the same old, same old. So that's a really interesting question. Like, I guess in some ways you do kind of get that, like, with other people who have been Batman, like Terry McGinnis is Batman Beyond, or even if Cassandra Cain became Batman one day, which is really the end game for me. But yeah, that's a really great question. I I would love to see it as long as it's done well, but I think especially in, like, an alternate universe, like in Elseworld stories, there's so much you can do with that. Or even just, like, kind of like do something where it's like, oh, you have, like, an ultimate universe in Marvel, where it's like its own kind of vast universe that has all these titles, but, like, is just a separate universe that has its own thing, has its own things and its own origins or own characters who interact or die, or, whatever it is, just differently than what we typically know. Because I think there is an appeal of that, of, like, oh, well, if Batman is different in this universe, like, there's so much more you can do with him. Sometimes a little change is all you need to make a big difference. But new question: have you seen Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman movie? It's biographical. It's a biographical movie about the creator of Wonder Woman, and the movie slowly made me love the character. I'd love to see that movie about Jack Kirby. I haven't even heard of that movie. That sounds really interesting. I'm probably going to check that out. Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. I'll definitely try to check that out in the near future. And yeah, gosh, I feel like there's sort of been a resurgence of, like, love for Jack Kirby in the last couple of years, where typically it's like Stan Lee tends to get all the credit, which, does he deserve some of the credit? Sure, but, like, Jack Kirby's deserves just as much, if not more. And, like, again, I'm just gonna plug Owen's documentary about Jack Kirby that he made. And you know what? While we're here, let's just drop that in the chat. While I'm still plugging people, that's one of my favorite video essays, if you could even call it that. I think it's a video essay that transcends being an ordinary video essay, which, as a video essayist, I really love to see when it feels like someone is, like, elevating the medium, because it is only, like, about 10 years old, like, video essays as an art form. But it's just this phenomenal documentary. And really, the Mr. Miracle comic by Tom King is, I read it like right before the Owens documentary came out because I was like, I've heard great things about Mr. Miracle in the past, and I really want to just have like the full context because the video looks like it's going to be awesome. And like that comic deserves all the praise it gets. It's a masterpiece. Like, if you haven't read Mr. Miracle, like, go read Mr. Miracle. It is, I think it's only like 12 issues. It's just amazing. It's a really beautiful story. It's also very intense and dark at times, but also kind of funny, and really just is such a beautiful story, I think. But I don't really want to say too much more at risk of spoiling anything. So let me drop this in the comments. There we go. Prominent comic creators getting a biographical movie could make people explore this medium. Yeah, and like it is kind of strange because I feel like there's so many like instances of creators like Jack Kirby, like who, you know, didn't really get the recognition or payment that he deserved for all his work. And you even see that, I think, with a lot of movies. Like, if you guys, I'm sure you, if you know me, you probably know Captain Midnight, who's a really big channel, but who makes phenomenal video essays. And he's actually one of the channels that like inspired me to make my own. And I think the very first video he ever put out was called like The Dark Side of DC and Marvel, and how like both of those companies do a really awful job of paying their creators properly and just treating them properly. Like, one of the examples I remember that he brought up was like Bill Mantlo, who's the creator of Rocket Raccoon, who unfortunately was like in an accident and had needed to pay medical bills, and like Marvel just didn't really help with that at all. And it wasn't until like the Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out that like people were able to raise funds for him. And like, but Marvel didn't pay for like, you know, his contributions to, you know, their company and to their universe, really. And I'm probably getting some of the details on that fuzzy, but like it is frustrating. Like, I think especially like I'd love to see more comics creators like just directly get paid for like this. Like, I haven't read the Matt Fraction Hawkeye run, another one that's been on my list, but like seeing how similar it seems to be, at least, or how much it's taking from like the Hawkeye show is taking from that run. It's like, yeah, like Matt Fraction and David Aja, I believe is the artist name, like they should be getting paid. Like, Disney and Marvel have enough money at this point, and I know like, oh yeah, they're a business and they have to make money, but like they're not lacking for funds. Like, it does, you don't have to make them billionaires, you know, just like for a universe and a franchise and like Marvel Studios, like that literally only exists because of the comics, which only exists because of people. Like, Marvel Comics don't exist because of the Marvel brand or because of like Marvel, the corporation. They exist because human beings worked hard to write incredible stories. And like all it takes is just like the bare minimum of recognizing those individuals would be wonderful. But yeah, still disappointed we didn't get an Ava DuVernay New Gods movie. Yeah, it's, for every one good thing that Warner Brothers does, there's like 4 things that they mess up. And that could have been so cool to see. I've never really been like a big New Gods person, but there's so much potential there. Like, there's so much potential to take characters like Orion and even like Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, like, and just tell these really epic but very personal stories with them. Yeah, next question. This is a very good question. What do you think a person needs to do, or what a person needs to make a good video essay? Sorry, what do you think needs to make a good video essay? The main thing that I'd say is make things that you actually care about. Because like for me, I think when I first started out, there was, sort of had the idea that like, you know, oh man, like people have covered this topic before, so I can't really cover it, or, you know, I won't have anything original to add. But like, if you're passionate enough about a story or a topic or whatever it is you're covering, then like that will show in your video. Like that's going to come through, and it's going to be original, and it's going to be unique because you put enough of yourself or your time into it. Like there's a lot that I could say here, and that I probably will. I think there is the advice kind of similar where I said of like make stuff that only you could make. I don't like think that needs to always be the case, but like I've realized the more videos I've made, the longer that I've been making YouTube videos, the more I've realized that like I just kind of want to make videos that I really, really care about. Like that's why I don't really do reviews on my channel anymore, and I barely did them at all to begin with. Is because like there's like a million other people who are super passionate about, oh, a new movie comes out and they do a review of it. And like for me, I want to cover topics that I'm looking at, this specific story, and I'm talking about this specific thing or what makes this story so special, and not just like, oh, I saw What If, I saw the TV show and it was fine, because like ultimately, unless I really, really care about something, I don't think my full potential as an artist and as a creator is going to come through. And so I guess to kind of circle back to your question, like just ask yourself, what videos do you really want to make? Or like what type of videos or style do you really want to put out there? And that doesn't mean that, oh, you're thinking about making an hour-long video essay on this show. I don't think like starting smaller is what I found works better, because like the first video I released on my channel was on Rocket Raccoon and Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was like my third attempt at making a video, which I forget exactly what the order was, but one of them, my first video was initially going to be like a rewrite of The Dark Knight Rises, and I spent a good amount of time on it, but just kind of got stuck on the script and ended up just being like, I don't know where I'm going with this. This is tough. And then I made like an entire first draft of a video for a Game of Thrones spin-off pitch. And then I was just like, no, this is like kind of a mess. And it just didn't really feel right. Like it was like 18 minutes, I think, that video. And that was a lot for my first video essay when I didn't even I was just literally learning how to edit videos. And eventually I just kind of recollected myself and asked like, okay, I have a few other topics in mind. Like, what do I really care about that's a little smaller scale? And I went with Rocket Raccoon, and I love that video. I'm still really proud of it, even though like my voiceover is probably, and some of the editing probably doesn't hold up as well with time. But like, basically, to directly answer your question, like I know I've already said it, but like find something that you actually care about. Don't feel like you have to, make video essays about whatever is trending or whatever, a new movie came out and like, you're going to put it out. Like if that's what you want to do, then do that. But ultimately it comes with finding your lane and finding your style. And it doesn't have to be like one lane or one specific style, but just finding what you enjoy doing. Because I think if you aren't enjoying what you're doing, or if you're just kind of half-assing your video essays because you feel like you kind of have to make them, and that's going to show. So hopefully that answers your question. That was a pretty long-winded answer, and I feel like I kind of just said the same thing like 6 times. But yeah, there's a lot more I could say about being a video essayist. It's an interesting experience. But you said the first video I saw of yours was the Uncle Ben video. It was very good. Thank you. I haven't I actually tend to rewatch some of my videos like fairly regularly. I haven't done that super recently. But there are like a bunch of videos that I'm like really, really proud of that I'll just like rewatch sometimes when I need to remind myself like, oh yeah, like I'm awesome at making video essays. And I haven't rewatched my Spider-Man that Uncle Ben video in a while. I think just like I'm a little burnt out on like MCU and Spider-Man discourse, but I do really love talking about Spectacular Spider-Man in that video. I just love that show so much. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. And then we got another question. Wasn't expecting an Elden Ring question, but I am delighted to answer it. How likely would Elden Ring bring you joy or despair? It's going to bring me joy. It's only going to bring me joy. Like, I am so excited for that game. And like, as much as I've talked about how excited I am for the Batman and how awesome I think that this movie is going to be, like, I think that's probably going to be the best Batman movie. I'm that excited for it, aside from maybe like Lego Batman movie, because nothing can really top that. As excited as I am for the Batman, Elden Ring, I am even more excited for. Like, it is my most anticipated piece of art that is going to come out soon, or just in general. Like, I love From Software's games. I think that's fairly obvious if you've seen my videos on their games. Like From Software February is also coming up again this year. I'll have a bunch of other videos that I'm really excited for. I'm just gonna get some water. Yeah, Elden Ring. The more I learn about the game, the more excited I am. I actually kind of like that we haven't seen that much of it yet, because I think especially that type of game is left better with a lot of surprises. I would not be opposed to seeing more gameplay of it before it comes out, and I will definitely watch like trailers for it if they come out, or like any new gameplay that comes out within this year. But like by the time it gets to like late January, because now the game got delayed a month to like late February, like I'm just gonna mute everything, like try not to see any trailers for it. But that game just looks amazing. It looks like this perfect synthesis of everything that From Software has learned from Demon Souls up to Sekiro, and just combining all their game, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, like combining all those games and the lessons they've learned from those games into one experience, while also injecting so many new ideas into it. Like having a horse, which can really change things, and just I normally wouldn't be thrilled about, like, oh man, it's kind of more of a traditional open world game now. And wouldn't say traditional, but it's more of an open world game now. I wouldn't be thrilled, because that's such like, kind of that's been the trend in the AAA space for, the better part of a decade now, really. But it's From Software, and it's Hidetaka Miyazaki directing it, and I have the utmost faith in them. Like, I've watched the Elden Ring trailer so many times now, I couldn't even, like 50 times, if not more, probably. I just am so excited for that game. The combat looks so fluid. I'm really excited that there's a dedicated jump button, and that you can like swing your sword and shoot your bow and do magic in midair, because I think that's just going to add so much fluidity to the combat. There's so much to be excited about. Like, I don't want to bore you guys, because I know probably most of my audience isn't as into From Software games as I am. But actually, you know what? No, I can keep talking about it. This is my stream and it's my channel, and you're just gonna have to put up with me if you don't like that. I Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm most excited about as well is that like George R. R. Martin co-wrote this game, and specifically wrote like the backstory and sort of history of the world, and then just handed it off to From Software and like, okay, you guys, like do with this what you will. So it's not like he's writing like, the dialogue or the item descriptions of the game itself. Like, it seems like that nothing that he wrote will actually be like directly in the game, in terms of like, yeah, he like wrote dialogue for a character, but he did write characters and he wrote the world. And like, I am a huge fan of like A Song of Ice and Fire, and the Game of Thrones books, and the first 4 seasons of the show. But I could not have dreamed this game up if I tried. This is a spiritual successor to Dark Souls, which is, my favorite game series of all time. Directed, developed by From Software, my favorite game developer of all time. Directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, my favorite game director of all time. And co-written by one of my favorite authors of all time, George R. R. Martin. Like, this is my dream piece of art. Like, it really is. And I am just so excited to get my hands on it, and I'll probably make a bunch of videos about it eventually. I'm hoping that I can make a video about it like after it comes out, because it comes out February 25th as part of like next year's From Software February. But given that it comes out at the end of the month and I'm just going to be playing it, it probably will be like later in March. I'll just still count it as part of that month. I also was thinking about doing like sort of like reasons to be excited for Elden Ring video, or like how to make it great kind of thing, that I might do in February, a few weeks before it comes out. So that's really exciting, but I'll move on to a few other questions and probably circle back to some From Software stuff, because, I see a few more comments. But in this age of comic creators getting a movie or animated adaptation of their original IP, do you think this will change the industry forever? Yeah, like, that's a really good question. I think like things have become so focused on like adaptation and franchises just in all of Hollywood and like the entertainment space, I guess. It's interesting to see how far that will go, because like now even we're seeing like, Invincible was the first season was very popular, which I mean isn't the most obscure of like, adaptations. It's still a superhero thing, but like Invincible was not a household name before the show came out. So, and like there's like I haven't seen it or I haven't read the book, but like the Sweet Tooth adaptation on Netflix, like, and even like Paper Girls getting an adaptation by Amazon, which that's another comic that's been on my list for a while. That I've heard great things about. So I think like what I kind of hope happens is you do get more of sort of the indie stuff, like some Image comic stories and just like smaller stories rather than just like the big two of Marvel and DC, which we're still going to get those regardless because that train isn't going to stop anytime soon. But I would love to see more attention brought to smaller comic creators and smaller, less known stories that deserve it just as much, if not more, than just it's a Marvel superhero or a DC superhero story. Which again, like I love Marvel and DC superhero stories. It is kind of interesting. I could not tell you how this might change the industry forever. I think it will, and I think it kind of already has. I mean, like Invincible, I think was just confirmed like yesterday that there'll be 20 episodes in season 2. And that's a show that I think will go on for quite a while because the source material, as you can tell from like my books back there, I have the 3 compendiums of the whole story. It's like 144 issues. It really is like, as a show based on the source material, I think it does warrant like at least 7 seasons of television. So yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of that stuff kind of start to be adapted. And it is the only really bad part about that is I think there's like, oh, there's no more original stories in Hollywood, but like it feels like there's less of them. Like everything has to be an adaptation, everything has to be a franchise, or every movie or show has to set up another movie or show. And I do think there is a cost to that, but I'm hoping that we'll see more of, kind of what I described of like, just lesser known stories or creators getting the attention they deserve because of the mainstream success of a TV show or movie adaptation. And then Corian says, I strongly recommend the Nier games. I think you would love them. Yeah, I really don't know much about them, but I do want to give them a shot eventually. I have like, again, my list of like a bunch of other video games, which I guess I can get into right now that I want to play. There's Eco and Shadow of the Colossus that I really want to play. Those are sort of next up on my list. Eco, because the reason why I want to play Eco, aside from just hearing good things about it, is because that's the game that inspired Hidetaka Miyazaki, who's the creator of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Elden Ring and all this stuff, to make video games. Like as a living, he realized like, oh, this is an art form that I want to create in. And they're also the same developer who did Shadow of the Colossus, which is a classic video game, which I've just been meaning to get to forever. So I have a bunch of the Metal Gear Solid games that I want to play because I've heard good things about those, and they're pretty bonkers. I've played like a little bit of Metal Gear Solid 5, and the cutscenes are just amazing. They make me laugh so much, and the gameplay was really fun in that too. But I will the Nier games, like I've heard some great things about, so I will definitely check them out eventually, but probably not like in the immediate future, just because I have my list of a million things that I need to play first. But do you think the gods will grace us with a Blue Point Bloodborne remaster, 60 FPS, please? There have been a lot of rumors this week. There's like literally every single week there's a rumor that like, oh, Bloodborne remaster or PC port coming soon, and it's just like there's no like they're not substantiated. They just some dude on like 4chan said it. And so I'll see it when I believe it, but I guess my sort of hot take here is that I don't really want a Bloodborne remaster or a Bloodborne sequel. There is an exception to that. Like I wouldn't be at all upset if we get a Bloodborne remaster, especially if we can get Bloodborne on PS5 or on PC, like especially the second one. And like, yeah, like, I mean, if you guys are all familiar with like the Bloodborne modding community, man, that's kind of a deep pool for my audience, I think. But like, there's a creator named Lance McDonald, who has some great videos where he sort of dives into the code and makes some mods of Bloodborne and Dark Souls and all these games. But he made a mod for Bloodborne on like a regular PS4 where it runs at 720p and 60 FPS. And like the PS5 is certainly capable of running Bloodborne at 60 FPS. And I love, at the very least, even if we never get Bloodborne on PC, which is the like ideal scenario, at least give us like a 60 FPS patch on PS5, because like you can do it. Like it has the power for it. And in terms of like a Blue Point remaster, like I haven't played Blue Point's Demon Souls remake because I don't have a PS5. I'm really excited to, because that game looks amazing and I love the original Demon Souls. Man, the reason why I don't necessarily want a Bloodborne remaster in general, whether it's Blue Point or anyone, is because I just don't really think the game needs it. Like the game came out 6 years ago, over 6 years ago now. Geez, like 6.5 years ago. It still looks fantastic. Like running on like a regular PS4, the game looks amazing. And that ultimately comes down to not just like, oh, you know, good graphics or anything, but like fantastic art direction. And I am worried that just by inherently, you know, completely remastering or like remaking it, at least, I guess I've kind of read your comment as remake rather than remaster. Like I was thinking about it more as like a Demon Souls, whereas like, you know, that game came out in 2009 and, you know, there was like 11 years between that and its remake. And I think it warranted, I know the remake and remaster terminology is like negligible sometimes, but I think it did warrant, you know, a graphical overhaul. And I've seen a good amount of, you know, Demon Souls on PS5 just from watching videos on it on YouTube. And like, there's definitely some areas where I think like, you know, the atmosphere is really well preserved or even enhanced in some ways. But I think just by the nature of making changes, some of that atmosphere is going to be lost. And that's something that's really special about both Demon Souls and Bloodborne. Those games have some of the thickest, strongest, most tangible atmospheres of any video games I've ever played. So I am worried that just by like, it's kind of like, oh, like don't mess with my baby, because like Bloodborne's my favorite game of all time. Like it's just like, I want that to be preserved as much as possible. And I think really the only issue I have right now is that like Bloodborne is only on PS4. So like if you don't have a PS4, then like you just can't play Bloodborne. I think there's technically a way to like get PS Now and you might kind of be able to play it on your computer, but it's I think it's like that and like the 60 FPS thing, like they're capable of doing it. So I would love to see a PS5 patch for Bloodborne, because you can play it on PS5 as well. I forgot to mention that. But like having it on PC would just open so much, because the whole modding community can get in there. And that it just adds so much longevity to that game, which already has more than enough longevity. So yeah, that's sort of my feeling on that. And in terms of like a sequel, because I brought that up, I'm of the opinion that Bloodborne does not need a sequel. Because I think it stands very well on its own. And like in terms of its themes, I think if you like set a game like, you know, the setting is in the city of Yharnam, if you just set a Bloodborne sequel like after the events of the game in Yharnam, whether it's, you know, a year after 10,000 years or whatever it is, like I think you kind of just end up telling the same story, because that game is all about cycles, and sort of the inevitability of a lot of the stuff that happens. So I think you're kind of, I feel like Bloodborne covers that so thoroughly that it's kind of hard to continue from there. With that being said, there's still a lot of different directions you can go in. You can set it in a completely new area. You know, you can I would kind of prefer that it wouldn't be in Yharnam, because we've seen Yharnam. And we've seen Yharnam done so well and so interestingly. Like there's lots of, you know, it could be a prequel or, you know, a spin-off in like, you know, the like Laron, which is an area in the Chalice Dungeons, which was sort of a predecessor. But again, like, you know, well, that's just like something similar that happened to this place happened to Yharnam, and then you just be telling the same story again. The only really, there's two things to this, like in terms of Bloodborne sequel. The ideal scenario for me, if there has to be one, is that it's directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki and like the A-team on From Software that worked on the first game. And like that decision came from them, of like From Software and Miyazaki saying like, oh, we want to make Bloodborne 2. And in that case, like I just trust that team. I think more likely what would happen is that Sony would say, hey, we want to make a Bloodborne 2 because we think it will make money. And then Miyazaki will go, well, I'm working on Elden Ring or other projects, so, you know, I'm not as interested. Someone else can do it. And I would still be really excited for that because, like, it's at the end of the day, it's more Bloodborne, even if it's noticeably worse than the first game. I think gameplay-wise, there's so much you could do. I mean, just putting more trick weapons in the game, you know, new set, like it's inherently such a fun combat system that I would not be at all displeased to have some tweaks to it and just more content for Bloodborne, like for a Bloodborne sequel. But I think story-wise is where I kind of get my less that lack of excitement, because I just think it's kind of tough to follow up. And like last point on this topic, I think, is that like From Software, at least like Miyazaki specifically in games he directs, he doesn't really tend to make many sequels. The only sequel he's ever made is Dark Souls 3, or at least that he's directed, because like Dark Souls 2 was directed by someone else. So like going from like Demon Souls, its own thing, Dark Souls 1, and then Bloodborne, and then Dark Souls 3, and then Sekiro, and now Elden Ring. Like only 2 of those games are set in the same universe. Only 2 of those games are sequels, and I'd much rather see him and the rest of From Software make a new IP like Elden Ring or Sekiro, or something even crazier, something completely different than they've done in a completely different genre, than just say, oh, we'll make another Bloodborne game. Which, like, as much as I would love that in a lot of ways, like, I would rather just see them expand, because that's kind of what made Bloodborne so exciting. Like, it was obviously shares a lot of similarities in DNA with Dark Souls 1, but like is also a completely different thing. And that's kind of what makes it so great. So yeah, I'm gonna move on to a few more comics or comments. Yeah, I'll be making that first Elden Ring video essay on the first day. Can't make any promises on that front. If I do, I will be shocked, because I will just want to be playing that game to death and just over and over again. But yeah, I still have to play Demon Souls well. I don't even know if I could get a PS5 right now if I tried, but I don't really need to, because as I said, I have plenty of other games to play, and PS5s aren't necessarily the cheapest. But let's get back to another sort of meta question here, like of making videos. When I'm making a video, do I rewatch movies and take notes and use it to build your script? Yeah. So like that's typically what happens. Whenever like I'm making a video on a topic, it's usually about something I've like seen before. Occasionally I'll watch something and just be like, oh my gosh, this, or like read something that's really connected with me, and I'm gonna start writing notes on it right now. But most of the time it's like with my Daredevil video, let's say, like I watched that, you know, when it came out in 2018. I think it was 2018. And then that was even before I had a YouTube channel, but I sort of already had so many thoughts on that series. And then, you know, before I made my video essay, I rewatched season 3 and like take notes and write down a bunch of bullet points. That's usually what I do with my scripts, is I just write down my ideas, like usually after rewatching like the movie or show I'm talking about. And then I'll just write down a bunch of bullet points and then just somehow mash those together into a coherent script and add some stuff in as I go along. But like I sometimes will like rewatch things multiple times, at least depending on the length of them. Even while editing, it feels like you rewatch the movie or show or whatever it is like a million times, and like even your own video a million times, to the point like by the time you're done, you're just like, man, I would just want to have some space from this, because it's just like almost overload of, oh, that's all you're taking in. But like that's something that helps me, because just having it fresh in your mind is really important. Because like sometimes you watch something once and then you think, oh wow, that's great, and you watch it a second time and you go, actually this was terrible, or actually this is even better, and I realized this connection that I hadn't made before. Like I'm a huge proponent of watching and watching and rereading and re-experiencing art, just because you can have such a different experience the second or third or even fourth time around. And with truly great pieces of art, you are going to notice details, I think, that you didn't catch the first 3 times, you know? So yeah, that's pretty accurate what you said. Like that's my process pretty much. Thoughts on Invincible 20 episode season? Yeah. So, I'm excited on one side because, you know, as I said, Invincible is a long story. The comic is a long story, and I love the comic, and I really, really like the show as well so far. So it's great that we'll be getting more episodes in season 2, because not only will that mean, oh, we get to watch more Invincible for season 2, but like they'll be able to take the time to, you know, it won't feel like they're just rushing to get to the end or to rushing and get to a specific moment in the story, I hope. And more that you get to spend time with the characters and you really get to see them grow gradually over time. Because that to me is the real appeal of Invincible, is the long form storytelling. I'm just gonna get a quick water. My voice is starting to get a little tired because I've been talking nonstop for 2 hours. But I don't know quite when I'll wrap up, but I still have plenty to say. So as I said, I can rant for hours on end. Yeah, so Invincible, like the appeal of the comic to me, what really makes it unique and effective as a story is the long form nature of it, that you don't just get to see, oh, you know, Mark Grayson goes out as Invincible and he punches a bad guy and it's cool and it's awesome. It's that like you really get to see Mark Grayson grow as a person. Very organically. You get to see him kind of age in real time, and you get to see the stakes of the story shift completely. Like that's what I really appreciate about like season 1 of Invincible. As great as it was, I'm much more excited for like season 4 of Invincible, where like things get really crazy. Like you think that the scope of the story is this, and then it just throws you a curveball, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is bigger than I ever imagined, or completely different than I ever imagined, or it takes you in so many unexpected but really interesting directions. So I think having a 20 episode season is a great way of making sure that growth and that process, like that narrative process, happens organically. But the downside, of course, is that if there's 20 episodes in a season, they're going to have less time, presumably, to spend animating and working on each episode, which means that, you know, the episodes might not look as good or might not have as much attention to detail as if there were just like 10. So I'm just really hoping that Amazon pumped a lot of money into season 2, because I mean the season 1 seemed to be very successful and very popular. And I even say, as we were kind of talking about the other day, like it's the animation definitely looks a bit stiff and kind of not the greatest at times in Invincible. And I really just hope there's a huge increase in budget, so the animators aren't just crunched for time and just work to death to make something that is like the bare minimum of being acceptable. Rather, it's like, take your time, like work on it and polish it. And that won't be easy, you know, even under the best of working conditions for a 20 episode animated season on this scale. So I'm optimistic, especially for the story stuff, but time will tell. Oh boy, we have more Soulsborne questions. This is delightful. I truly think a Bloodborne animated show would be amazing. I think I both agree and disagree, because like it could be so good. And like if you can capture like the atmosphere and like environmental storytelling that the game has with like its setting of Yharnam, oh my gosh, like so good. And I think animation would definitely be the better route to go than like live action. 100%. Because I mean, if you've played the game, there's some pretty horrifying monsters, and that's just gonna be, if they got like a really really good special effects and like makeup team, like you could make some really, I would kind of like to just see them like make like monsters in live action, like all the beasts in Bloodborne, like the Bloodstar beast. Can you imagine like just like that being like, you know, obviously you can't do it all practical. You can't like build an animatronic Bloodstar beast that would like look well and move well. And I think that's part of the issue. I think you would really have to lean into the horror in both an animated show and, I guess not as much in anime, but in like live action, if they did that, you'd really have to lean into the horror rather than the action side. But yeah, like the fights could be so cool. Just using like the colors and the atmosphere of that show to like tell that story could be so good. But on the one hand, I do also think that like it couldn't really be canon, you know, or if it would, I would be shocked. I think like you could definitely tell a story in the Bloodborne universe. But again, like I think my issue with it, my main issue is that like it does stand on its own. And I think these games especially have so much to say, but only if you look closely. And that sort of is because it's a video game and because you can look at every little like nook and cranny and you experience the game. Like even the story that it tells can really, at least like the narrative and the story of like the player character and the player in Bloodborne is only a story that works in a video game in an interactive medium. Whereas like if you try to replicate that exact same story more or less in an animated show in a non-interactive medium, I just don't think it works. But you could absolutely do like, something in that universe or just a smaller story in Yarnum that happens, and that would be really cool. I would doubt it would ever happen, but it could be awesome. And like, I mean, if that show gets made, then like there will probably be a Bloodborne too. So not all bad, it could be pretty cool. I think Hellboy would be amazing for the Souls genre. Yeah, I don't really know much about Hellboy to be honest, but I'll take your word for it. I really haven't read or watched any Hellboy stuff, unfortunately. Um, yeah, no, Jedi Fallen Order style Hellboy game. Yeah, I actually got to finish Fallen Order. I liked it. I got pretty far into it, at least halfway through, if not more. I think it's a fun game, and it definitely takes a lot of influence from some of the Soulsborne games, in like in I think in a really good way. In like a lot of its level design. Some of the level design is also kind of weird and frustrating because I'm just like, where the hell am I supposed to go? Like, I mean, it might just be bad. I'm horrible with directions, but like, there's some points in that game where I'm just like, I have a map that like shows a detailed layout of like every area in the level. Like, why do I not know where the hell to go? This is just like, I just felt sometimes like I was like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be headed or how to get to where I'm headed. Um, but like for the most part, I really enjoyed the level design. That actually I was really pleasantly surprised. And the combat's fun. I mean, it's not super, doesn't nearly have as much depth as like a Soulsborne game, but I don't really think it needs to. At the end of the day, like it's a Star Wars game where you play as a Jedi, and all you really have to do, I think, in a Star Wars game where you play as a Jedi is make being a Jedi feel cool, and it does. So like, yeah, I do got to go back and finish that game. This is not a question I expected to get, but wow, am I glad I got this. How would you feel if the first X-Men MCU movie turns out to be a musical? I would love to see a musical about 5 students and Charles Xavier. I mean, like somebody call Kevin Feige, right? Like that's the winner right there. I like unironically, I think that would be hilarious. Like I would love that. Like I dead serious. Like yeah, like that's kind of ridiculous, but can you just imagine like that, like I think that would act like, I'm not a huge X-Men expert or anything, but like that would kind of lend itself well of like these characters going through these very like dramatic struggles and this very sort of epic clashes as mutants and humankind begin to confront one another. Like that would be so much. I think that would actually weirdly lend itself well to like the drama and the theater of or like the theatrics of a musical. So unironically, that would be amazing. So Guillermo del Toro Bloodborne movie would, yeah, that could be that would be, I wouldn't stand in the way of it. Like, and then seeing as you're a big From Software fan, have you heard of the creator TB Skyen? I have not. He's made a lot of prominent boss design videos about Bloodborne and other Souls games. What I'm gonna do right now, that sounds awesome. That sounds very up my alley. I'm gonna look up TB Skyen right now and just like make sure I check out their videos because um that I mean that is Bloodborne videos are. Oh, and look, they even have he has a video about Deltarune Chapter 2, which, man, guys, Deltarune Chapter 2. Oh, I just played it recently. So unbelievably good. Like, oh, like I know I've talked a lot about Soulsborne games and how much I love them, and they're my favorite genre of game, and my favorite type of game, and From Software is my favorite game developer. Yada yada yada. I love Dark Souls. You get the point. But like, just below the Soulsborne games are like Undertale and Deltarune. Like those are my favorite games of all time after the Soulsborne games because they are just so charming. They are they're the type of games where like there is no fat. It is just all like every part of the game is amazing. Every part of the game is fantastic and beautiful and heartfelt. Like the writing, they're the best written games I think I might have ever played. Like just in terms of having like enjoyable dialogue that isn't just there to be enjoyable, if that makes sense. The characters are just surprisingly fleshed out. The world is surprisingly fleshed out. The combat is a ton of fun. It's so creative. And again, like games that can only really be video games. Like you could try to make, like, oh, an Undertale animated show, and it might be all right, but like the specific story that these games are telling can only be told as a video game, only as an interactive thing. Yeah, it's also J-Del, thank you for the recommendation, by the way, for TV Sky, and I saved a video to watch later. I'm going all over the place, but yeah, man, they're just so good. I might make a Deltarune video essay. I don't have any plans to at the moment. I beat Deltarune Chapter 1 once, and I want to play through it again because I know there's some stuff I missed, and also like they're not long games. None of Undertale, Deltarune, neither of them are long games. And like just oh man, my like the music's phenomenal in these games. The boss fights are phenomenal. But really, the thing that sticks out to me the most is the writing. I think Toby Fox, who's the main developer on Undertale and Deltarune, like his writing is just incredible. It's so funny. Like they're the funniest games I've ever played too. Like no disrespect to Portal 2 because that is up there as well. But like there is just effortless charm. Like he makes it look easy, even though it couldn't have been easy. There's just so much polish. Excuse me. I'm going to drink some more water because my voice is going out. Alrighty. I will probably wrap up maybe in like 15 or 20 minutes, I guess. Maybe a little more. We'll see. But yeah. Really quick before I answer another question there, like just thank you guys so much for coming out and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble about things and for supporting the channel. Like I know I said at the very start, but like 8,000 subscribers is nothing to scoff at. It's kind of crazy to imagine like 8,000 people like in a room just watching my videos or being like, hey, we like your stuff. Thinking about it that way, I think kind of removes the abstraction of just this is just a number. So yeah, that's crazy. And like even like I'm sure some of you guys have been around for a while and some of you guys are new, and that's awesome. So just thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with me and supporting what I do. Just by showing up and watching my videos, like you're doing that. So I love making video essays. It like makes me happy, and I love sharing them with you guys and seeing your questions and comments. And like it's I think video essays are a thing, making them on YouTube especially can be very discouraging when the algorithm doesn't favor you. So I think like reading comments and recognizing that like, oh, there are real people that I'm in some way connecting with, even if it's just, oh, that's awesome. Like I love this thing too, and I'd love to see, your take on it, or oh, like even just sometimes like on my Doom Patrol video, seeing like some people just talking about how the show helped them are like some of my favorite comments to read. And it's just like I have such a small part in that, like because in terms of just like seeing that comment, because I just talked about a show that other people made, but like seeing that in some part, like my videos have a connection or make a connection with someone, or like, I don't know, inspire people, hopefully, like that's awesome. That is worth more to me than like any amount of subscribers or views. Because at the end of the day, I think if you only make YouTube videos for views or subscribers, you're going to be disappointed. Because like most of the time, the dice roll of the algorithm does not go in your favor, even if you work your butt off for a video. So just like seeing your comments and knowing that you guys come out and watch my videos is kind of surreal and hard to quantify, but I appreciate all the more because of that. So just thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Doug from Forever Kind of Geek. Yeah, I'm really excited as well because now we're getting close to 10,000 subscribers, guys. We're less than 2,000 away, which is crazy. I feel like that's gonna be that, like that's like the next big milestone, obviously, and being in quintuple digits is gonna be pretty surreal. Because like as much as I kind of just said numbers don't really matter, they help. So and that's kind of why I want to do this, because it's like, man, like I hit 8,000 subscribers. That seems like something to celebrate, and figured, hey, why not live stream? And it's been a blast so far. So continuing with that, Jay Della asked, what other video games are you a prominent fan of? Yeah, so I mentioned Soulsborne games and Undertale and Deltarune. I'm a big Halo fan, and the reason why I paused there is because I kind of have a complicated relationship with the Halo franchise. I love all of Bungie's Halo games, and I even really like Halo 4 a lot. And like Halo 5's multiplayer. Excuse me. But I think, I had some issues with Halo 5's story and its campaign, to put it politely. Like, so I kind of, and I'm really glad actually that Halo Infinite will have free to play multiplayer, because it means that I don't have to pay money to just play that game with some friends. And the multiplayer looks like a lot of fun. Like it looks like fun Halo multiplayer, and it's free. And at its worst, Halo multiplayer is still like fun to goof around in with your friends. And like this looks a lot better than that. So I don't really have too much hope for the story, but I love Halo. I like Halo 3 is one of my all-time favorite games, both as like a nostalgia thing because I played that like in middle school and stuff, and also just like it being an amazing game. So I really like Halo. I'm just gonna throw out a bunch of my favorites. I love the BioShock series, all three BioShock games. BioShock 2 I think is very underrated. The story isn't quite as compelling to me as like BioShock 1 or Infinite. But the gameplay, I think, of BioShock 2 is the best in the series, where you play like as a big daddy, and you really, to borrow like a popular phrase from like game journalists, like it really makes you feel like a big daddy, like this walking tank with a drill on your hand. And as the game goes on, you get more and more powerful, and the combat gets more and more expressive. And I feel like they took, the combat from BioShock 1, just added a lot more polish and depth to it. So I've been meaning to go back and replay BioShock 2 for a while, but again, I have all these other games to play as well. And I love BioShock 1. I love BioShock Infinite, even though BioShock Infinite and BioShock 1 as well aren't perfect games. Like they certainly have their fair share of flaws, but I really, really love those games. And I love the stories and all of them. And Minerva's Den DLC in BioShock 2 is amazing. If you guys haven't played Minerva's Den, the DLC for BioShock 2, but you've played some of the other BioShock games, like check out BioShock 2, check out that DLC. It is amazing. It is phenomenal. So I really like BioShock. I really like the first Red Dead Redemption game. I haven't played the second one. I like both Portal games a lot. Portal 2 is one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, man. In terms of like multiplayer games, recently I haven't been playing as much because the game has just been broken for me on Xbox. But like Apex Legends, I used to play a lot more, and I'm excited for the new season, which comes out soon because there's gonna be a new map and a new character. I for some reason I'm still playing Overwatch occasionally. Which great game, lots of issues with it and things I don't like about it, but it is fun. Yeah, Rocket League I play a little bit of because that went free to play not that long ago, and I'm terrible at it, but it's a very hectic game in terms of multiplayer stuff. But I guess like in terms of other games as well, there's the Elder Scrolls series. I have been meaning to play Morrowind forever, but I love Oblivion. It's again not a perfect game. Maybe shows its age on occasion in some ways, but like I have a lot of nostalgia for that game, and I think the writing in that game is fantastic. I think the quests and the stories of like the guilds, like the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood, and even the Fighters Guild in that game are really, really interesting and really well done. And like I love Skyrim as much as I love Skyrim. I think my biggest disappointment with that game is the quests and the stories just feel very bland. It's often like, hey, you're gonna go here and you're gonna kill this guy and we'll give you the gold. Hey, good job. Whereas like in Oblivion, there's just so much more to it. Especially with stuff like the Dark Brotherhood, because I always like playing like stealthy and like rogue characters and assassin characters and RPGs. So yeah, I really like those games. Let's see. I'm just gonna like pull up my Steam library really quick because I do love video games and I love talking about them. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. That's a horror game. I love that one. That's one I haven't played in a long time, but really effective. Kind of scary. Some of the monsters in that game, and well, not as scary. Soma by the same developer. Who is it? Irrational Games, I think. I believe they're the developer. Soma is fantastic. It's this really awesome sci-fi horror game and just has a lot of sort of existential and philosophical questions about consciousness that it raises that despite me looking at my Steam library now, last playing it February 9th, 2016, over 5 years later, I still think about that game sometimes. Um, yeah, there's just some I really like the way that game handles player choice as well, where like there's not a ton of choices that you make in that game, and it's your choices have no impact on the story or on like the outcome of the game. So like in a game like Dishonored, like I love both Dishonored games. I haven't played Death of the Outsider, but in like Dishonored, or in BioShock, it's like, oh, if you're a bad guy and you kill people, then you get the bad ending. And if you're a good guy and you save people, you get the good ending. And it's not something like that where like it's more of a binary thing. I mean, in Dishonored, there is more of like there's also like an effect in the gameplay on the world and stuff. Oh, there's like more plague rats or whatever. But like in Soma, the choices that you make are specifically there just to affect the player. They have no effect on the player character, or not. I wouldn't say no effect on the player character. They have no effect on the game world really, or no effect on the outcome of the story. It's just to affect the player, and I think that's really brilliant. And I wish more games did that. So just to answer the question to get off this rant really quick, and all the games I've listed, which of them will likely grab my interest for making a video about? A Halo video essay would be interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm always gonna be making more Soulsborne video essays because of From Software February every year, and probably even some in between, just because I have so much to say. But I think a Halo video essay I actually really considered, and I might still do this actually, maybe after Halo Infinite comes out. This is like a long time ago, but I thought about making a video essay about the marketing of Halo games because like the way Halo 5 was marketed specifically was very actually really interesting and really effective. There was that whole Hunt the Truth campaign where you had like Keegan Michael Key of all people doing like this sort of podcast that would release, and it was sort of this lead up into the story, and then it ended up being completely irrelevant and completely different than the story we actually got in Halo 5, which I think was just because like clearly whatever little we know about the development of Halo 5, it clearly wasn't it was rocky. It didn't go too well in terms of them having to cut and rewrite stuff, I'm sure. But I think like how these Halo games are marketed is really interesting. Gosh, now that I'm saying that's like a whole retrospective on the series would be really interesting, but it would be really long. But even like maybe even like 343 games specifically, because even though I don't always agree with all the decisions they've taken with the franchise, it's clear that they care. And I think it's interesting to see like even like going back to Halo 2, they had like, the E3 demo that was like very dissimilar from what the game actually ended up being like. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but I could also make video essays about I don't know, like ODST. I really love that game. I think the game has a lot of atmosphere. I wouldn't say I have a particular idea in mind, but I guess that came to mind. I don't really have any plans for a Halo video essay this right now. I mean, Halo 3 is my favorite in the series. I don't really know what I could say other than just like, yeah, this thing rules, like the campaign rules. And maybe I could look at like my favorite mission in Halo 3, which is the Covenant, which I think is kind of a perfect Halo level. It just has everything. That might be fun. Like it has you fight the Covenant, you fight the Flood, you battle Scarabs, there's vehicle section, there's on foot section, and it just blends it all together. It's this great synthesis of all like it's the perfect use of the Halo sandbox, I think, in one level. It's sort of a microcosm of what makes these games great. So actually, thank you for bringing this up because that could be a fun video. It probably won't be out for a little while if I do end up making it, but like stuff like that. There's also another game I want to mention that I really like is Hollow Knight, which is just how do you make a video game that's good, that is that good? I don't know. I don't know how you would do it. Like it's unbelievably polished. The combat is so much fun. I suck so bad at the platforming. I died more times to the platforming in that game on my first playthrough than I did to the combat. Like, I legitimately think that I just died more to platforming because I was so bad at it. That's not because the platforming is poorly designed or the controls aren't good. They are. I just suck. Like, but what I really like about Hollow Knight, aside from the combat and the music and all that stuff, is like the atmosphere and the world design. It might just be because it reminds me so much of like Dark Souls 1, where the world is completely interconnected and all these areas connect to one another and loop back and are stacked horizontally and vertically. And just like, I don't think I've really seen a video game since Dark Souls 1 have world design that felt that purposeful, because I think games like Bloodborne and Sekiro actually have phenomenal world design. And to be specific, I'm not talking about level design, like the design of an individual level and how that's laid out and where enemies are put and things like that, but more so how the world is connected. And while I think like in Bloodborne and Sekiro, those games have phenomenal world design, like nearly as good as Dark Souls 1, if not on par. The issue is that like in Dark Souls 1, you can't fast travel until like, 2/3 of the way or halfway through the game. So you really do have to memorize how everything connects to how each level connects to one another and how you can navigate the world. And navigating the world in and of itself is a challenge and an experience. Whereas in Bloodborne and Sekiro, you can just fast travel. So from the get-go. So you're not really going through the world as often and not really, I think, getting as much of a sense like geographically of like how everything connects. And even though you do, but like it's not as essential to the experience is really what I'm trying to say. Whereas it is in Dark Souls 1, but in Hollow Knight, it's that same feeling to me of like they worked really hard. The developers worked really hard to make sure this game world was connected in a way that is organic and believable while still being just brilliantly designed to guide the player and to, get lost in the world a little bit. It's tough. Like Hollow Knight's a hard game, both in terms of its combat and in terms of navigating the world. Like I got lost a bunch. There were times where I didn't know where I had to go. But when you make those connections and you realize, oh my gosh, I just unlocked this shortcut, it feels so good. And I just love how exploration is treated in that game. So that's another one. I'm looking at my Steam list again. Fallout New Vegas, classic. I love that game so much. And then you have Hotline Miami. Both of those games are awesome. Super Hot is another game kind of in that vein that I really, really like. I've played a little bit of the VR version as well as mostly in the vein of like or mostly on what's the original game? Just Super Hot, then there we go. Super Hot, Mind Control Delete I've played, which I really enjoyed. And the VR version is awesome. I just love that premise of time only moves when you move. It's such a fun gameplay mechanic. And I think the last game I want to mention right now is Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is so good. Like one of the best single player FPS campaigns of all time, just period. Like every single level in that game is so much fun and so memorable, and the movement is just so fluid and expressive. It's just an awesome game. The multiplayer is a lot of fun. I didn't really play it as much because I got to the game much later in its life cycle, like only until like this year I really played it, or maybe last year. But I didn't really start playing the multiplayer, and I don't really play it anymore because the servers are broken. So it is what it is. But Titanfall 2's campaign is just phenomenal. If you guys are vaguely like first-person shooters, go buy Titanfall 2. It's worth whatever the price is. Like, I'm going to look it up on Steam right now, like, even though I already own it. I think I got it on sale for like $6. Yeah, it's $30 right now. You can definitely wait for it to go on sale, but it's worth the $30 price tag for the campaign alone, in my opinion. But yeah, getting back to comments, I'll probably wrap up in just a few minutes. But I think a fun collaboration like DC Defined or One Marvelous Scene, but with FromSoft games in time for the release of Elden Ring would be Poetry. So like, do you mean like writing poems about how, like, almost as a video essay, like for how good like From Software games are? Because if so, that sounds awesome. But I want to make sure I understand what you're saying properly. I do think man, yeah. I was actually I was at one point planning to do another speaking of collaborations, another like Praise Patrol, like for Doom Patrol this year, but I just didn't really have time in my video schedule, which is a shame because I do plan on making several more videos really about the Doom Patrol show specifically. But there's one in particular I have in mind about a specific episode in season 2 that's like my favorite from that season, which I think is just so well done. And I wanted to do another collaboration this year for Thanksgiving, but I just unfortunately I'm not going to have the time. And I guess on the topic of my videos, the reason for that is because I have all my videos planned out till February right now. In fact, I can't believe I haven't talked about this already. My next video, which is about the Cat in the Hat 2003, a masterpiece, excuse me, will be coming out in about 2 weeks. And I'm very excited for that one. The script is pretty much done. It's bonkers. I don't really want to give too much away, but I'm really excited for that. And I'll have a video up for Christmas as well. I might be able to squeeze a video in between November and Christmas, aside from the Cat in the Hat one. But yes, you can ask a question here, Gregory Buttocks. Nice name, by the way. Yeah, but and after my Christmas video, which I'm also going to reveal because it was supposed to come out last year, which was about the episode of Justice League called Comfort and Joy, which was the Christmas episode. And unfortunately, when I was like about like 80 or 90% done editing it, my laptop died and I lost all my progress. So I'm going to remake that video for this year. And then after that, it is January, which I will be making my January video, which is going to be my best video about Jimmy Olsen. I'll get to your question in just a moment, but just going to grab the best comic book of all time off my shelf really quick. About this delightful piece of art, Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, Who Killed Jimmy Olsen, by Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber. Hey, there we go. Can we get a hashtag Jimuary in the chat, please? I really hope I clip this and put this on Twitter or something. Yeah, no, this is legitimately one of my favorite comic books of all time. It's amazing, and I'm gonna make a whole video about at least part of it. And I probably won't reveal more, but let's just say it. I might not be the only one making a Jimuary video. Jimuary is more than an event. It's a way of life, I'd like to think. So I'll have that in Jimuary, and then of course, thank you very much, Doug. Doug's a very great friend, as you can tell. True friends support you in times of Jimuary and in promoting Jimuary. So, yeah. But then I'll have my From Software February videos as well, which there currently will be 4 of them. So I just, it will take me a while to make my January video and my From Software February videos. And I'm not really sure how much my life will get in the way of my video schedule. So I'm trying not to put too much on my sort of schedule, just because I don't know what my life schedule will be like for, until February. So I just want to kind of get out in front of all those videos, because those are the ones I really want to make. And if I can fit a video essay, especially in between like my Cat in the Hat video, which comes out in 2 weeks, and Christmas, I would love to get something out for you guys, even if it is just like another live stream like this, because this has been a ton of fun. Or if it's just like a more casual video, at the very least. But yeah, so I'll bring it up later. I'll bring it up in a minute. But I want to answer some questions. Thoughts about the new Batman trailer. I did talk about this a little earlier, but I am happy to repeat myself. And I believe this should be on my channel after I have once I end the stream. I'm like it should be on my channel after. So if you missed what I said, you can go back. But basically, I love the new Batman trailer. I think it looks amazing. I'm super excited to see how they're going to handle this take on the character in terms of like, given that he's starting in such a like Bruce Wayne seems to be in like a very bad state of mind, like sort of just lashing out at the world. And I think that just gives him a lot of potential to grow from that into someone who is, you know, not not being as brutal or caring more about his own well-being, because he doesn't really seem to care about his well-being that much in the trailer, which I like because it puts him in that very emotional kind of dark place, and as I just said, like gives him room to grow upwards. I think what they're doing with Riddler is super interesting. The fact that Batman is scary is not something I necessarily love all the time. Like I think Batman should be scary to criminals, but like I feel like I wouldn't even want to be in the same room as this like take on Batman. Like I'd be terrified. And I really like how they seem to be leaning into that. Like for all the choices that this film is making, it seems like they're really committing to them with this character, and I'm just so excited for it. Aside from Elden Ring, it's my most anticipated piece of art that will be coming out. And those two things come out within literally a week of each other. So I don't know how I'm gonna handle that. That's gonna be like the best week of my life is like the Friday that Elden Ring comes out, and then the next Friday where Batman comes out. I don't even know. Like I'm just gonna die of happiness. But yeah, I think it looks awesome. And while we're answering questions from Gregory Buttocks, also, do you have any tips to prevent constipation? I'd recommend talking to a professional about that if that's something you're struggling with. But eat a lot of fiber. Prune juice, I've heard, helps with that. Laxatives, if you're desperate, it's not really an area that I'm an expert in. But yeah, I definitely recommend talking to a professional. But I appreciate you being vulnerable and asking us the real questions here on this stream, because this is a safe space to discuss constipation. I've always said that about Critical Rants, and I'll say it again. And Doug, you better not clip this and put this on Twitter. Okay. Well, we're gonna move on. Have I played Code Vein? I haven't. It is on my list. Man, this is kind of weird to admit, but I'm always very skeptical of like a lot of most Souls-like games, because I'm just like, there's no way it could be good as like From Software's like Souls-like games. God damn it, Doug, you already clipped it. Fair enough, whatever. I have nothing to hide. I said what I said, and I stand by it. We support the constipated here at a Critical Rants HQ, so might as well lean into it. But yeah, Code Vein I haven't played. I do think I have like a bit of a hesitation, because I'm just like, From Software and like the Miyazaki directed games especially are so good at what they do that I'm afraid that like I'm always just gonna be like, oh, but like it was a fine attempt at impersonating From Software's style, but unfortunately it didn't live up to expectations. Like I feel like I'm kind of almost elitist about it. But Code Vein's combat looks like a ton of fun. Story, I've only seen a bit of Code Vein. I'm probably wouldn't be as much into, and I think that's also where like a lot of other Souls-like games I kind of am skeptical of, just because like there's so much attention to detail. But the combat looks awesome, and I do want to get to it eventually. I've heard from a few friends that the combat is fantastic and has a lot of depth in Code Vein, so it is on my list. But I haven't played it. I still have to play Neo 1 and 2. I actually picked up Neo for free not that long ago, and that's another game. Shoot, I forgot about that. I gotta play that too, which is even developed by From Software, just not directed by Miyazaki. Yeah, no, I'm 100% an entitled From Software fan. Like there is no getting around it. I am such just like a shill for From Software and for Miyazaki and the rest of the beautiful, talented people who work as developers for that company. But yeah, talking about like, I don't like the Bruce Wayne as the mask interpretation as much now that like as you grow up, and I kind of agree. Like I think like, yes, Bruce Wayne is the Mask, but that's not all that he is. And I think, like, especially talking about the Batman, shocker that I would talk about the Batman on this stream, but like, man, there is a lot I think you can do even with that idea of like, yeah, like Batman is using Bruce Wayne as a mask when he should be taking care of Bruce Wayne. Like, and I hope that makes sense. Like, because as I've said like 16 times at this point, like, yeah, like Bruce Wayne does not seem to care very much about Bruce Wayne in this movie. Like, he does not care whether he almost like lives or dies. Like, he is just on his mission, and that's all he's gonna do, and he's gonna do whatever it takes. Like, and I think like I do obviously like the idea of Bruce Wayne being the mask, but again, like that's not all he is, and that's not all he should be, because like, you know, like yes, Batman is kind of who he really is, but so is Bruce Wayne. Like, he's still a person, you know. Um and like I think you can even, you know, like as I said, like, you can directly comment on that with like that's what I hope this film will do, of that exact idea that you brought up, where like as Bruce Wayne like sort of grows up and changes and matures in this film, he'll realize that like, yeah, like I shouldn't just be treating Bruce Wayne, like who I am, as an object, like as a mask that I just put on and use to further my means as Batman. Like, he has to find a balance. And I think like that, like what I really like about like the like what Grant Morrison says about Batman. Yeah, like he's both Batman and Bruce Wayne. Exactly. Like, but what Grant Morrison says about Batman is that like they said something along the lines of, you know, I always found it kind of interesting that like people think of Bruce Wayne as like a crazy person when like in reality, like he's this person who trains every day. He's incredibly disciplined. Like, he's a self-aware individual. He knows that it's kind of crazy to go out and dress up as a bat and beat people up, but like he's like happy doing that, and he's a little more balanced mentally in like Morrison's run and their run than like you might see in some other ones. At least like going into the run, not necessarily like, oh, he's in the grip of the black glove and reality is kind of being bent, and you know there's the whole Batman of Zara and R thing, and I love all that stuff. But I just think their take on that, really, anytime Grant Morrison opens their mouth, I'm just like, you said something so profound. Like, I just love that idea of like, yes, and that kind of is a stark contrast, I think, to the what we're seeing with the Batman. But I love both of those interpretations. Yeah, exactly, kind of like the Peter Parker and Spider-Man thing. Like yeah, like, and I think there's even much more of a line between Batman and Bruce Wayne than like Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Like, there's more of a like a relationship, I think, between Peter and Spider-Man, where like Spider-Man affects Peter's life and kind of like in a negative way often, but not always, like in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Um, but well, but then like Batman and Bruce Wayne, they have more of a like I think there is a harsher line between those two personas, but it's not as harsh. It doesn't have to be harsh, and it shouldn't be, I think, as harsh as it's often perceived as. Um, but like going back to what Morrison said, like I like the idea, because when you think about it, it's like, yeah, this dude who is like the peak of human like physical condition and even like mental condition. It's like that's someone, like if you met someone like that, you'd be like, wow, you have an incredible like level of control over your mind and your body. And Bruce Wayne does. And like he knows, I think like that's what makes Morrison's take on that character so unique among many things, is just like it's almost like, I don't know. Grant Morrison's just a genius. They're, as I said, like my favorite comic book writer. I mean, Tom Taylor kind of is as well, but Morrison, I've been reading. I do want to get to a few more questions and comments really quick, but like I just started reading Grant Morrison's Animal Man run a few days ago, or about a week ago, or yeah, probably just a few days ago, and I'm about halfway through it now. I was literally like reading it right before the stream. It's so good. Like, oh gosh, man. I was already thinking, this is what I mentioned a few minutes ago. Like, maybe I'll talk about, like, while I'm talking about video essay plans or something, like, I'm already like, man, I kind of want to make a video essay about Animal Man, which is rare because, like, it's, you know, to be not even like, I thought of this, like, part of it is because I do know a spoiler for sort of towards the end of the series. And I just think it's a really interesting statement to make about fiction, and reality even. Um, but like, so that's part of it. But like, I already want to make a video essay about it, and I'm sure I'll get to it eventually. I don't know when. But man, sort of like, I also want to make a video essay complete, like, about the full run of Doom Patrol that Grant Morrison did, which was originally my plan. I know I'm jumping all over the place with like 6 different topics again, but like that was originally my plan for last month, was to just make a video essay about Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, and then I just kind of got busy, and I took part in At Home Comic Con, and I just was like, I'll make my Mr. Nobody presentation for At Home Comic Con, and I'll eventually circle back to Doom Patrol. So I don't know why I'm just like, man, I love, really want to make video essays about comic books that are often incredibly hard to decipher, because Grant Morrison is, I wouldn't say they're the most accessible writer necessarily. I think they're more accessible than people give them credit for. Especially like Animal Man is not really like, it's not hard to follow at all. At least in the first like 12 or so issues that I've read. It's like, here's a dude, his powers are that he can take animals' powers, and there's a few weird things going on. Like, that's basically it. Like, whereas Doom Patrol is much more like out there and abstract and surreal. Not that Animal Man isn't all of those things, but it sort of blends that in a little more naturally, I think. Yeah, it's getting late. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining and sticking around for so long, Jdell. It's been awesome answering your questions, and it was very nice chatting with you. And I hope you get some good night rest. But yeah, I got like six different things I want to say because there's questions. But yeah, Animal Man I want to cover eventually. It's great. So I'm just gonna go down through now. Like, Korian's asking a few questions, and I apologize again if I'm mispronouncing your name. But what do you think of the new Star Wars anime? So yeah, Star Wars Visions. I actually haven't seen it yet. And at least in concept, I love the idea of, here's just a bunch of anthology stories in the Star Wars universe in different animation styles, and like, just, like 2D Star Wars animation is just like, like, it's, you have dudes with lightsabers hitting each other. Like, how could that not look well if you put a little time in, but I haven't seen it yet. And I've heard some mixed things about it. I think I'm just a little turned off from Star Wars in general. Given, like, I mean, the Rise of Skywalker didn't exactly leave a great taste in my mouth. And even like season 2 of The Mandalorian, as many great qualities as it has, I really didn't like, to be honest. I have so many issues with it. And I will make a video about that eventually, which should be fun. But that's a Patreon goal. Also, hey, support my Patreon if you guys are, interested. It's pretty cool. I got a little down thinking about that Star Wars video. I really don't like being negative in my videos, but I think it's specifically what I have to say about season 2 of The Mandalorian is kind of important, given that we did talk about like franchise storytelling and how pervasive that is these days. And like, if you guys enjoyed season 2 of The Mandalorian, that's awesome. I just have a lot of issues with it, and I see it has a lot of merits, but it has some issues too. But like, Star Wars in general, I think I've just kind of been like a little burnout from. And part of that, I think, is the discourse that people are like, I've had Star Wars muted on Twitter for months and months now, because like, I don't need to see like the same people have the same exact argument about The Last Jedi for the 600th time. It's like, there's nothing to be gained there at this point. But I haven't seen Star Wars Visions. I do want to see it. I will probably get to it. If not within the year, then like within, I don't know, the first couple months of 2022, I guess. I am currently watching Legion, which I actually haven't watched in like a week or so. I'm on like halfway through season two, and Legion's amazing. It's such a brilliant, just experimental, gorgeous show. It just never settles for anything less than like excellence, and it takes so many risks, visually especially. And I just really think it's awesome. I didn't really know much about it going in, and you don't need to. Just check out Legion if you haven't seen it. And yeah, Doug from Forever Kinda Geek is the one who recommended it to me. So thank you, Doug, for introducing that to me. And yeah, to answer your other question, do you read comics online? Yeah, so I do have some physical copies, and on my shelf, but mostly I read them on like, oh shoot, a Legion collab, that's a good idea. Once I finish the series, because yeah, I think I only have like 4 more episodes in season 2, and then I think there's only 8 in season 3, right? So like in the other 2 ones, I think so. It won't be that long, and if you just prod me about it, I can finish watching it pretty soon. But yeah, I do read comics mostly online just because buying comics physically is expensive. Oh, it's so expensive. Like, oh man, I do really like. I prefer to read them physically because I just like reading any type of book physically rather than digitally. But like reading comics digitally, I don't mind. I just it's especially buying like comics issue to issue. Like I just have never really done. The only thing I'm going to do that for is the Batgirl series that comes out in December because I just need to support my girl Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown. Um, but I'm really excited for that series. It will just be great to have her back as Batgirl again, and hopefully taking that character to some new places. But yeah, I mostly read on DC Universe. Yeah. So yeah, where to start? So there's DC Universe Infinite, which is like it's a monthly service. I think it's like $7 a month roughly. And you just get access to an absurd amount of DC comics and Marvel Unlimited, I believe. I don't have that, but it's pretty much the exact same thing where you pay like a monthly subscription, I believe. If anyone else knows more about this than I do, then please chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. But like, and you just get access to like literally thousands of comics. So, in my opinion, if you're looking to get into comics, those are both great places to start. But I've also heard about a service or a website called Hoopla, which is Hoopla. In fact, let me see if I can just pull it up now because I've been meaning to do this for a while. It's an app, and I think it allows you to like, yes, anything that's in like your local public libraries or like in public libraries, you can just borrow if you have a library card. So like you can pretty much do that. You can just read comics for free that way. So if you like, don't want to spend the money because like even, like not everyone has the money to spend on comics. And Lord knows I spend way too much money on comic books when I really should, probably be saving it. But like I think those are great places to start just because there's so much at your fingertips. And if that's overwhelming, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna link Hoopla's website here just in case anyone else wants to use that because I need to look into this as well. And I do tend to read more DC stuff right now, at least because I have DC Universe Infinite and because I already have access to so many comics like Animal Man. That's where I'm reading Animal Man. That's where I read Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. Buying like the omnibus for Morrison's Doom Patrol was not, that was like well over $100. And I was like, I just can't justify spending that when I can just read it, not for free because I pay for the service, but like, I've already paid for it. So effectively, like I already have access to it is what I'm saying. But I would recommend starting there. You can also go to your local comic book store and like, find single issues there really cheap usually, or just trades that, like if you're looking for like, really longer runs, it is probably going to be pretty expensive to buy a physical copy. And I say this, I want to be clear, I'm saying this as someone who's fairly new to comics, like really, really into comics, because like I didn't really get into comics until like about a year and a half ago. But hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, and like my biggest piece of advice in terms of just like reading the stories themselves is like don't be overwhelmed if it's like because I feel like there's a conception that you walk into like a new story in a comic book or as a new reader and there's just all these characters, you don't know who they are, you don't know what's going on, and that's really only true in like I feel like a lot of events and big crossovers. In like 95% or more of comic stories, you'll probably be able to just intuit what's going on if you don't know the backstory of every character. Like you'll fill in the gaps, like you'll still get the story if it's a good story. And like I believe that for a long time, like, I can't get into comics, like seriously, because there's just, it's too big of a barrier to entry. The barrier is much, much smaller than, you might think. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Comics are cool. I really like them. I started reading them right sort of as we got into quarantine, like in like April of 2020, more or less. So like, I mean, not right when we got in, but like, a month or so for where I lived after quarantine really started. So that kind of helped to have just a lot of there's always more comics out there. There's always just, whether it's DC, Marvel, Image, Indie, like whatever it is, like there's always more stuff out there that's great to read. And there's a lot of great people in the YouTube comic space, in the comic tube, as it's called, like Doug from For Every Kind of Geek and Owen Like Comics who stopped by, and Matt Draper and Panels to Pixels and a million other people, here, like if you watch their videos, it's even if like, for me, like even if you watch someone's video, like a video essay about a story and you haven't seen it and you go, wow, that sounds really cool. Like, I think it's always better to watch someone's video and realize like, oh, wow, this sounds awesome. I want to read this, even if it means spoiling the story for yourself. Because I think any good story, any great story, if you spoil it, then like you'll still be able to enjoy it if it's worth your time. Obviously spoilers are not preferred, but yeah. We've been going for almost 3 hours now. Holy moly! So I'll probably actually wrap up. I said I was gonna, I said like I'll wrap up in 15 or like 30 minutes, and that was like an hour ago. So but I tend to ramble, but I'll actually probably wrap up in a few minutes. So if you guys have any last questions or any comments or anything, now would be the time. But aside from that, yeah, this has been a blast. I love talking more casually about stuff like this because it is kind of a welcome break from like working on videos, because video essays take a long time to make. And it's nice to just be able to chat more casually about stuff like this. And also just interact with some of you guys. And, there were a lot of really great questions today. I still want that X-Men musical. I think that would be so good. That would be so fresh too. But yeah, I just really like being able to kind of have a different vibe and not have to, spend hours and hours and hours on the script and hours and hours and hours editing the video. But speaking of videos, what's going to be my next video? It will be on The Cat in the Hat 2003, the masterpiece of a film. I won't really say much more because it will be out in almost exactly 2 weeks. In 15 days, tentatively, is the plan. So, yeah, it will be a fun video. It will be probably one of my favorite, but I mean, that I've made. It's just it's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun writing it. And I feel like I have a fairly unique take on that film. So I'm excited to debut that. Yeah. So that'll be out in about 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. And yeah, so that's yes. Exactly the greatest movie ever made. I agree. The Cat in the Hat 2003. You can quote me on that. It truly is. Man, I shouldn't even say much more. It's awesome. I love it. That's all I'm gonna say. And while we're on the topic of the Cat in the Hat, of course, I have a DVD copy of the Cat in the Hat on my bookshelf. There's no reason I wouldn't. And guys, if you want to experience the Cat in the Hat on DVD, you can buy it for like $3.74 on Amazon. I don't know why it's priced so low, given that, it's one of the best films ever made, but it's a steal. And I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already, or if you have already, because you're going to learn new things about the Cat in the Hat the more you watch it, as I have. You'll be enlightened in ways that you might not expect or want, but it will happen. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. I'm really excited to see what people think of that video. I think if you enjoyed my Threat Level Midnight video, which is kind of my best video, and if you haven't seen that, go check it out. I'm so proud of it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever made, just like in anything, like any art that I've ever made, like not even just video essays. I think it's so good. I had so much fun making it. I edited that video like a madman. I literally like did nothing else but edit that video for like a weekend, and I finished it so much sooner than I expected because I just was so excited to be working on it. But this is somewhat similar to that video. Sort of I wouldn't say a spiritual successor, but I guess a spiritual successor, a spiritual peer of that video, I would say. I don't know if that will quite surpass the heights of Threat Level Midnight, but it's a similar concept, I suppose. So yeah. Hey, Brent TV, thank you so much, dude. Go check out Brent's channel. His channel really, really blew up recently, and it's well deserved. He makes all these crazy videos about like just all these collectibles and popsicles. Thank you so much. We Brent and I actually met on a film set. Man, almost 2 years ago now. That's weird. But yeah, and back then, like his channel and mine were both pretty young, and now he's past 1 million subscribers. So thank you, Brent. That's awesome. That's very nice of you to stop by and check on me. Gosh, yeah, it's lots of it is nuts. Just like I don't even even like Doug from Forever Kind of Geek. We also met. All three of us were on the same. That's how, and now we still have these connections. So that's pretty cool. You're kind of catching me just as we're wrapping up, and man, we're past the 3-hour mark. What the heck? Yeah. So yeah, Cat in the Hat video will be coming out soon. As Jeffrey Lyons of NBC TV said of the film itself, I believe my video will also be famously funny. Boy. But yeah, thank you guys again for coming out. I am gonna probably sign off here because it has been 3 hours, and I am started out. I was wearing this jacket because I was very cold in my room, and now I'm a little less cold. In fact, I'm just gonna take this off. Yeah, and thank you, and thank you, Karayan, for stopping by and being here like the entire time. That's very nice of you. And everyone, whether you've been here since the start of the stream. Yeah, you too, Brent. Thank you so much. Seriously, I appreciate you popping in. Man, it's like whether you've been following my channel forever or just like yesterday, or you've been in the stream for a minute or since the start. Like, thank you guys so much. I truly love making video essays so much. It's just, and I wouldn't really have a platform to share it on unless you guys supported my channel. Oh yes, of course. There are a lot. You have lots of great questions. I'm really excited to do this again now because this has been a blast. But yeah, just thank you guys. 8K subscribers now. That's weird. It's awesome, but it still hasn't hit me. But I'm really excited. I have so many, dude. As I said, I kind of laid out my video schedule for the next couple of months, and all that, of course, is subject to change. You never know what will happen one way or the other, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited for pretty much every video that I have coming out, which is good because I think I've kind of realized over the past couple of months that the video is the type of videos I want to be making. And yeah, thank you. I believe I will be too. It's hitting 10K is not that far off. And all it really takes is one video to blow up. I think what it was for me was my Daredevil video that just blew up, and suddenly my channel was just growing and growing and growing. And that was just happened months after I had released it. And even the videos like my Threat Level Midnight video that I'm very proud of, it hasn't blown up yet. Maybe it never will, but I'm super proud of it. And all my videos that I made, I'm proud of to some extent. But I really going forward want to make videos that I can look back on and be like, man, I'm super glad I made that video for whatever reason, whether it's because I feel like it was something that I just wanted to express about the film or the comic or whatever it is, or whether it's a little more personal because I think my videos have been getting hopefully a little more personal as time has gone on. Yeah, and Uncle Ben, that's one that really blew up too. And I like that video a lot, and I haven't watched it in ages, but because Spider-Man's a jerk and I hate him. I would never support Spider-Man. What a dumb jerk. What a dumb jerk any Spider-Man is. Who do they think they are? But yeah, I'm gonna go on the record and just say, you can clip this if you want, Doug. Spider-Man's a jerk, and anyone who likes Spider-Man is even more of a jerk. But yeah, Uncle Ben View, Spectacular Spider-Man. It's awesome. I love Spectacular Spider-Man, and I'm just kind of rambling and winding down. But thank you guys again. I think I'm going to call it here, actually. So thank you guys again. You rule, and I couldn't really do this without you. So yeah, you rock, and thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you guys in like about 2 weeks when I release my Cat in the Hat video. So I will see you then. Oh.